have everybody quickly take a seat and we'll get started as on time as we possibly can. Got talking about lionfish with Mr. Destin here and went over time already. I apologize. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Destin City Council, May 20th, 2019, to order. Up first, we have Pastor Barry Carpenter of the Destin United Methodist Church to lead us in our blessing and prayer.
Let us pray. Sovereign, gracious, loving God, we come tonight to begin this meeting to thank you for our lives, for the blessings that surround us and in which we are immersed. We thank you for the way you treat us, for your kindness, your love, your patience. We know that life as it is now may not always be the same, but we thank you for what we have, for our health, for our friends, and for our wonderful city. We come also to ask for grace and your help for those who serve this city and who serve the commonweal. I pray for this nation, for our great state, for those who lead it, especially for those who are involved in ministries to the poor and to our children, and who serve our nation's military. Thank you for grace extended to us. May we extend it to others. Forgive us of our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First up is the agenda approval. Bray, we had the letter for Dr. Frazier. Did everybody get that email? I'd like to add that onto the agenda. That's the only thing I have. Does anyone else have anything to change?
Do you want to put it, Mayor?
I got a question about the agenda, Mayor. You'd put on your Facebook page that we use second reading is not an ordinance to purchase property. We don't make ordinances to purchase property. That's a resolution, and I don't see anything on there that says anything about purchasing property. Am I missing something?
No, I made that mistake. It was a resolution, and the 4-3 vote last time was the that solved that resolution.
Okay.
That's why I didn't put
I didn't
anything
see
on the
article.
agenda, but I did see that you had the Crosstown Connector on your deal, and I think, Kyle, do you think that do you want to move it up?
Yeah, I think it'd be better if we moved it up.
Want to move it up
4A?
right on 4A?
That'd be good.
Just need a motion to that effect.
Or how about, let's make it, I guess, 4A-5 or something, right ahead to short-term rental discussion? Is that good?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so those are the two changes. Kyle?
Yeah, we just need a motion to that effect.
Can I offer a change as well? I'd like to just add an item under F2. I'd like to give the council a brief, very brief discussion on the TDC and a potential expansion of the TDC boundaries.
And that is where at, Miss? Oh, that's just under yours?
Right, that would be F2.
F2. And that's expansion of the TDC.
Kyle, you need a separate motion, or
Wait,
Kyle, you need a separate motion?
can
or
we do it all at
do
once?
You can do it all at once.
I'll make that
bundle.
motion for both those items.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion second. Seeing no further comments? Yeah, the vote is unanimous, so moved. All right, item 1A then. We have approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes of April 1st, 2019 regular city council meeting.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Is there any comment about that? Seeing none? So moved. Item 1B, approval of the minutes of March 18th, 2019 regular city council meeting.
So moved.
Motion.
I have a motion.
Which one of us did it? Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Ramswell. We have a second. Any discussion on the minutes of this meeting? Seeing none? Unanimous, so moved. All right. Under 2A, presentation, Connecting Communities Through Trails. Ms. Brittany Moore, would you like to come on up to the podium? She's not here? Oop. All right. Then maybe she's just delayed in traffic. We'll move on. We'll bump up Mr. Brad Benner for FDOT Resurface and Restoration Rehabilitation 3R project update. Sir?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Brenner has informed us that he's not going to be able to make it tonight.
Okay, we're 0 for 2. All right. Then we shall go. I guess if she shows up, we'll just break in, because I'd like to see that presentation. It was pretty good. All right, so right now we'll enter into the public comments on agenda items that are not public hearings and any other matters not on the agenda. So we have most all these cards are for the Crosstown Connector part. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say on any agenda item that's not a public hearing? You want to just go right into the... Go ahead, Ms. Bell.
Marcy Bell, 3 Gulf Breeze Court. Let's see, items on the agenda, I apologize. So short-term rental task force, this will be past my point to talk, so I'm not real sure what I would want to say, except for that maybe it shouldn't sunset and maybe it should continue. Maybe we should look at how that's working and such. The second item was the beach safety corridor ordinance. I'm not sure where that's going also, but I would tell you that I do have photographs that if you haven't seen them, that I'd like to share with you in reference to the fact that there's no beach for a beach corridor back on Holiday Island, I believe it's Sandpiper Cove. And the last thing I wanted to tell you about, and I don't know if this is the right place, so tell me to stop if I need to. The East Pass at the jetties where the snorkel boats come in, I had heard about it, but yesterday I was witness to it and I caught on video one vendor comes in and clears people out so the snorkel boats can back in. And that's a public beach used, and it's at the state land. And I just think that it's inappropriate for vendors to come in and move people out of the water when they're swimming there, just like the public. So commercial businesses can come in, and I just think it's wrong. There's plenty of place out there. They don't have to come all the way into where we're swimming. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. We'll have our code enforcement folks and the city manager look into that. Is there anyone else? I'm just going to go ahead, seeing how we got a lot of people want to talk, and the Crosstown Connector is an agenda item that we just moved up and not a public hearing. So I'm just going to call your name, and if I call your name, come on up and share your 3 minutes of your opinion with us. First up is Carrie Harbinger. Sorry, Carrie. I butchered your name.
Carrie Harbarger, 413 Spring Lane. Thank you for hearing me again. I wanted to clear something. It was actually a very valid question. I was talking to some city council members about this, the corridor, and there were some questions brought up about why now. And I wanted to reiterate some things. You know, a lot of people felt, in talking to my neighbors, that this project had fell off the table for a long time. You know, I got to thinking back, and it's been several years ago, we had conversation on this dais. Some of the council members were here, Councilman Marlar was. And if you recall, perhaps, we spoke about the land where the campground is, and at one time, you suggested we allow the building of affordable housing for the workers. Do you remember that? I'm sure that a lot of people were led to believe this thing had died a long time ago. And somehow, recently, there's been some air breathed back into and a little concern for the people. I don't think there's problem making, and nobody means to act like they've not been abreast of it. But obviously, there's a lot of concern that people thought this project was dead. So I wanted to clear that up. And again, I wanted to ask the council to consider or reconsider moving forward until we do something, have a little bit more clarity with the people. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, Julie Cotton. Just remind everybody, just state your name and your address for the record.
For the record, Julie Cotton, 749 Vintage Circle, Destin, property owner. I'm also chairman of the Destin Chamber Board. We represent over 900 members and business owners. And on behalf of those businesses, we would ask that you support the Crosstown Connector. This will certainly allow for residents as well as those who work in Destin to get to Destin, to get to their businesses quicker and a lot easier than what we see right now. And then also, we also would ask that you not pass up the monies that are already allocated, monies that don't come to us all the time. We sit in meetings all over this county and look at monies that go elsewhere, and so we ask that you don't pass up that money. What would we do with the property that we've already acquired? I don't know. So please approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, Dewey Destin.
Thank you, Council. Dewey Destin, 777 Spring Lake Drive. I want to give you a brief history on Crosstown Connector / corridors and how we got to this point in history. In the early 2000s, the state of Florida came to the city of Destin and said, the level of service on 98 is so horrible that y'all have to do something or we're going to stop the issuance of any permits along the corridor. Of course, that put quite a panic into everybody that was on the council at the time, so they started looking at the issue and came up with a number of solutions that came from studies from various high-powered avenues. One study suggested that we should take out the median on 98, shrink the lanes down to 10 feet, and put 3 lanes in each direction. Viable option, cost a lot of money, have to get the state to go along. Another one was turn it into 2 parallel one-way roads. I think eastbound would have been on the present road. Westbound would have been along Mountain Drive. Another viable option, which would have provided 3 lanes in each direction. This corridor connector was also discussed off and on. It had been on the shelf since, in the 90s. It also would entail spending money. And the worst part of it was it would entail routing the traffic from Highway 98 out through the neighborhoods of West Destin. And then we arrived at the multimodal, the magic bullet. Multimodal allowed us to ignore the capacity of 98 and the congestion and just pass a couple of ordinances. That's all it cost us. No real construction, no real solution. Well, we're about 12 years into multimodal now, and the best I can tell, it hasn't done so well. Congestion is still horrible. We haven't accomplished anything, And the only thing I know for sure that it's done is require business owners to put bicycle racks in front of their businesses, which, oh, by the way, you get a bonus on your parking requirements. So we're back to the point we were about 12 years ago, where we've got a terrible problem on 98, and we've got to do something about it. I would suggest that this alternative is probably one of the worst things we could do. We don't address the problem. We don't spend much money. We're going to tap into DOT and let them pay for part of it. And by the way, the only reason DOT would pay for part of it, and the reason they do put money into municipal roads, is because if they increase the capacity on their road. And whatever the amount may be, believe me, there is a reason for that to happen. That's Commons Drive, which is a prime example of what happened in the county when they were facing this problem. They put in Commons Drive, and we argued and fought about what the true improvement in the level of service was from that two-lane road for a number of years, but it was an improvement. And so that was one small step, but even the county didn't propose making it a four-lane road through the heart of residential sections of town. So we looked at this corridor/connector on a number of occasions in the council for 20 years, put it back on the shelf because of the impact it would have on those areas, and because that it really wasn't going to fix much of anything, and it certainly wasn't going to serve the people who live here. It doesn't make good sense, and we didn't think and never did think that it did. I would just ask you to examine a couple of questions before you go forward.
Can you wrap it up, Dewey, after the questions?
Yep, let me go real quick on this and I'll be done. The questions are, what are we going to do with Stallman Avenue? To build this without a solution to Stallman, the worst intersection in town, makes no sense at all. It's quite dangerous, actually. If you want to see what this will do to the western residential sections of Destin, go out to Commons Drive any summer afternoon and see what happens when 98 is backed up. It's a parking lot. I would urge you not to go forward with this project. As to what to do with the properties that you've acquired, oh, that's a no-brainer. Turn that old campground into a park, sell it, and use the money to buy Gulfront access. There are a number of things that would further the interest of your constituents much better than building this corridor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mike Buckingham.
Mike Buckingham, 510 Calhoun. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor. I think Mr. Destin just touched on a couple of things that I think all of us need to really look at hard. Prior to the new construction on the west side of town here, the county did a hell of a job and built a nice Commons Drive. And it was nice, but it was full, packed. So the west end, with Danny Wharf away, is nice for ingress egress to get everybody in and out. 8 lanes coming, it's going to be nice, it's going to be packed. Then we're going to bottleneck down to 100-foot right-of-way. We're going to come in through the old part of Destin, we got 100-foot right-of-way. Not much we can do with it, make a couple small changes, but then we're going to go over the bridge, we're going to go across the little stretch there between here and Fort Walton. 4 lanes. And get over top of Fort Walton Beach. Bridge. 4 lanes. So let's go ahead and bring in alternate 19, because trust me, that's what this road will be called if we go forward with this. It will be called alternate 98. And let's bottleneck it like we do Commons Drive, and let us, the citizens that live on the west side of town, suffer, because that's what's going to happen. You're choking us down to nowhere. Please keep in mind, if it turns into alternate 98, then what's DOT do? They release the 94, quote, I think 93, 94% that were already at capacity in the Harbor District now, which leaves 6 or 7% left. Well, I don't know how many more big buildings you can build with only 6 or 7% left. So y'all provide another road, how many big buildings we're going to get? How much more traffic? Guys, vote no. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Buckingham. Up next is Ken Wobbler. And I got him for another.
Thank you, Mayor. Ken Wampler, 310 Laripe Loop. Good evening, everybody. We're doing good. Hey, I'm here to speak about the Crosstown Connector. I don't have a magic solution, but what I would remind everybody, obviously, is the fact that we as the residents are looking for a way to get from the harbor to our homes. I live on off of Airport Road, so I've experienced what happens when you expand a 2-lane road to a 4-lane road, and I will tell you that there's no easy solution. And to that extent, I'll tell you, you also struggle with something else that's near and dear to everybody's heart, and that is public beach. And I equate the road issue to public beach. If in 1975 we had the wherewithal to figure out how to get traffic through Destin and had the wherewithal to buy public beach, obviously we wouldn't be standing here today. And so what I would tell you is that the problem's not going to change. We as the residents of Destin have to struggle with what goes on Highway 98. They're already widening it 6 lanes up to Airport Road, so there's already going to be traffic coming through. And what I would encourage you is, if there's not a perfect solution, there's a better solution. And the better solution we have in front of you today is something that the council's been struggling with for years, and that's better than the alternative, which is to do nothing. I think the alternative to do nothing is not a very good alternative. You've got to do some relief for us, the residents that live here in Destin, that want to get down to the harbor without having to go on 98, that want to get to our homes on a regular basis. Is there going to be a bottleneck at Stallman? Yes, if the intent is not for us to use it as residents. Clearly, the general public is going to get word of the alternate road. But for the most of the general public, they want to get through the area as fast as possible. That's not going to be a good alternative for them. But for residents of the city of Destin, it is a great alternative for us, because every Sunday you'll see me out biking on the roads, but I don't go anywhere near Highway 98. I would like the same options if I wanted to drive down to the harbor, I wanted to go to one of the restaurants and get in and out real fast. I do not use the Commons Drive area to get to Fort Walton Beach, nor do I use it to get to Walton County. I use Highway 98. But if I wanted to just spin over to Winn-Dixie, I have the ability to do that. If I wanted to spin down to one of the restaurants on the harbor, I don't have a way to do that easily. And I would tell you as a group that the alternative you have in front of you today is to push forward with maybe not a perfect solution, but you have a solution. And I would encourage you to stay on the path. Don't take that $14 million and say, we're going to push this down the road a little bit, because pushing it down the road means the cost is going to go up. The problem's not going to get any better, and we as the residents of Destin obviously are looking to you all to make a decision to continue to carry this forward. Will we have other situations that we have to deal with? Yes. But we have situations today that you didn't have to deal with 30 years ago, and I would suggest to you that what you have in front of you is a way to minimize the damage or the pain that we have to go through in 10 or 15 years should the topic come back up again. So that's my 2 cents worth. I hope you vote for the Crosstown Connector. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Bill Remington.
Good evening to you all. I'm Bill Reddington, 722 Vintage Circle, Destin, Florida, resident for 19 years. Since I actually drive the airport road back to get in beyond Kelly, go by the elementary school and all that, I just don't see the Crosstown Connector as a fix for all that. I don't know whether you all use any modern day GPSs, but half the world that's coming here uses a GPS. There's a button on there that says alternate routes, okay? That's not going to change. Maybe it's time to talk to the people whose lives that you're going to affect down there, the voters, in terms of the people that are going to have to be dealing with all that extra traffic there, because trust me, even now today, I had to go up to my office, which is up by Backyard Burger on Opelika Lane. It took me 23 minutes to get from Opelika Lane to here, okay? And I think that you need to consider the Stallman situation, the flooding on Legion Drive, which will have to be fixed. I mean, there's just a whole bunch of things here. I mean, since the first time I saw this thing, okay, the first plan that I saw, this stopped at Benning. Now I pulled it up today because y'all were going to talk about it again, and all of a sudden we're running partway down Azalea, okay, which certainly makes sense because you own the right-of-way on either side of the road. But the reality is that's all residential neighborhood in there. Okay, all that you're passing through here to get there from Airport Road is residential neighborhood. Maybe it's time to do what we did when Waste Management tried to put the Waste Management bill on our taxes so that we would pay them a year in advance. Maybe it's time to take a petition to the citizens of this area and see what they want. You know, and I listen to the gentleman that has to ride his bicycle and so forth and so on. I understand. Okay, but guess what? I drive those roads every single day, and the traffic is going to only get worse if you enact this connector. And on top of that, you're not all the way done. So it's just going to move the nightmare down closer to the bridge. That part's not going to change for 15 or 20 years. So what's going to happen is Stallman, Calhoun, where you got the parking lot, all those feeder roads, Mountain Drive, they're all going to turn into a nightmare because people are always looking for a faster way. And the city is, the people that drive are just not as uninformed as you would think, especially with that. So I would hope that you would either consider tabling it and get some more options squared away so that when you come upon a plan, okay, that you're getting it all together rather than just moving the nightmare from one street to another street and it's still going to end up at the bridge, okay? And that's what my hope is that y'all will do that, okay? Because I don't want my neighborhood, my residential neighborhood, to turn into a freeway like all the rest of the streets are here. So, I mean, that's just how it is. It doesn't change. I drive the roads every single day, every day. Okay, so please consider that.
Bill, I got a question for you.
Yep.
Is the traffic here now? Is the traffic in residential neighborhoods here
Yes.
now? Okay, so
Yeah, not as bad as it will be, okay? Because
How-
people use
how-
Destin Commons Drive. When I drove down here, I cut over at Walmart to come up Commons Drive, and I was car number 46 waiting
right,
at the
but
turnaround.
the traffic's here now, and
Well, when you say here now, I consider the whole area. Yes,
right,
it's here.
but it's already on the back roads in neighborhoods.
Not like what you're going to do when you're pointing it all that way.
So, and we have $7.5 million of use it and lose it money. So you think it's good
Well,
just
so
to
use
walk?
it a different way.
You can't use it in a different way. This is earmarked for the 2,100 feet to be finished. So you're all,
Mayor,
you're
point
good.
of order.
No,
Point
I'm
of-
just going to ask him a
No,
question.
Mayor, if you want, I'll have a motion to censor the chair. I think out of an abundance of efficiency, and I want to encourage you to ask all of these questions, but let's not have a cross-examination of all of our folks that have, I mean, we got a litany of folks that want to come behind him. I think we all can reserve our comments to the discussion portion.
Okay. Thank you. I was giving him more time at the podium, but that's all right. Lockwood, Burnett.
Lockwood Wernett, 10 Country Club Drive East, Destin, Florida. I'm also here speaking on behalf of the Destin Chamber. What I would ask the City Council to do is move forward with your comprehensive plan. Under the transportation element, under system design, which is Objective 2-1.1, continue to provide a safe and convenient and efficient and cost-effective multimodal transportation system and roadway network that optimizes access for present and future residents. Policy 2-1.1.1, pursue additional road corridor improvements. The city shall pursue the acquisition of right-of-ways, the design and construction of multimodal facilities for future existing corridors that will facilitate the east-west, north-south movement of all modes of transportation as shown on maps 2.1 and 2-2 of the transportation element, which shows this corridor, the Crosstown Connector, as an item. the maintenance of new road corridor assignments. The city shall continue to implement multimodal corridor management plan that identifies alignment opportunities and challenges for all modes of transportation, including a parallel facility to Harbor Boulevard, Emerald Coast Parkway, and Main Street. Right-of-way for additional access roads. The city shall acquire the necessary right-of-way east of Azalea Drive, Mountain Drive, to complete the east-west route and north-south connection referenced in policy 2-1.1.1 above. Operation, this is policy 2-1.3.2. Operations of the existing road network shall be maintained and enhanced with strategic new connections, reconstruction, and widening projects as appropriate. Investment in sidewalks, cycling facilities, and transit facilities shall be significantly increased, and I think this does that. That's included in the design of this roadway. Policy 2-1.3.16, develop interconnected street network. The city shall continue to develop an interconnected road network, providing an alternative to Harbor Boulevard, Emerald Coast Parkway for traffic. The alternative corridor shall provide a continuous connection from Danny Werfel Way in Okaloosa County along Commons Boulevard through the city to Stallman Avenue. Additional north-south alternatives east-west of Main Street shall also be considered to further create a grid network. The recommended network is shown on map 2-1. Which again shows this crosstown connector. You're trying to develop your policies, and your adopted comprehensive plan say that you're trying to develop a grid network to help move traffic through town. You currently have that traffic heading east or heading west on Legion Drive, and then it turns on Beach and goes through a couple of neighborhoods. Now you can funnel it through a designated corridor from Beach to Benning Drive. We think that it's an appropriate, and it's in your plan. It's something that will help with the traffic, and I understand the impact of the traffic living off one of the neighborhoods on Commons Drive, but I think we have to develop that grid network, and this is an opportunity to continue it, so I'd encourage you to stand by your comp plan. Thank you.
Up next, Dion Luis. Moniz, sorry about that. I should have brought my fillet knife with that one.
I should have wrote it in phonics for you. Well, good evening. Dion Moniz, 6310 Augusta Cove, Destin, Florida. Mr. Mayor and council members, I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm chair-elect for the Destin Chamber, but I don't need to repeat what Julie and Lockwood have already said. I agree with all that. I will add that so far, to my knowledge, we've had no chamber member come up to us in opposition of the Crosstown Connector. Everyone's in favor of it. But what I really wanted to talk about tonight was, as a business owner, I'm a partner in a local law firm, and I'm president of a local title company here in town, and I represent a lot of local clients, businesses, homeowners, et cetera. I've asked as many of them as possible through the months, as this has been a hot topic, what they think about the Crosstown Connector and whether they're in favor of it or against it. 100% of the clients I've talked to are in favor of it, because they all feel that it'll help ease up, make the traffic more efficient and more effective for east and westbound traffic for the local residents to get to their homes and or local businesses. And so if we can improve that, doesn't that improve, that helps all of us. That helps the residents get to their homes, that helps us get to the local businesses. I myself am guilty of getting on Amazon and ordering some things that I don't want to get out in traffic to try to patronize a local store. So from my standpoint, from all my clients' standpoint, we're all in favor of the Crosstown Connector. Plus, this has been in the works for 28 years, and a lot of council members like yourselves have worked very hard on making this happen. The money's there. It's not coming out of the city's pocket. The money's there to spend. It's been 28 years in the making. I think it's time to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Up next is Bruce Crow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. So I have two hats. First is I'm a resident at 42 Terracotta Way. Have lived there for 27 years. Been involved in business here 30 years. And we used to call this, I think it was 30 years ago, Azalea Trail. And 30 years ago, we said, boy, it's going to be great when that's done, you know, because the traffic was already starting. I'll take you back a little bit, and you know there's probably some people behind me and maybe some even in front of me that don't remember that when the Emerald Coast Parkway went to 3 lanes in one direction, the DOT in their infinite wisdom made the lane on the right right turn only. They had arrows all the way down from Destin Commons all the way to, you know, Two Trees. And, you know, we went to DOT, we as private citizens, and said, those arrows are crazy because what you've done, you've just got a 4-lane road. Nobody rides in the right lane unless they think they're going to turn, unless you're local and you've actually figured it out. So they came with one of the blacktop grinders, right, and ground up that right lane and took those, you know, the arrows off. They never even put a cap on there either. That's why the right lane, except for the repaving, was always rougher because, you know, they scratched that off. As soon as they took that right-hand turn lane off, you know, it was like the choke points were totally freed up. I find it interesting. A lot of people talk about, you know, riding in traffic. We've all done it. One of the biggest things that I always tell my wife is that, you know, if everybody was familiar with 98 Emerald Coast Parkway as we would hope that they would be, it would actually move quicker because, you know, we've got that 5-6 lanes across when you come up on Danny Warfel Way, and it's clogged up all the way to it in both directions. And then as soon as you get to it, it just opens up. Anything you do, my point is, anything you do, if you know, add that lane, now we're adding, right, 3 lanes in each direction. Whatever you do, Destin, you know, Commons Drive was part of this project, and it was all supposed to connect. It was an incremental project. The TDC understands it. I represent the TDC as chairman. We voted for this. We're the one, you know, we're putting the money aside right now as we speak. $6.5 million, I believe. We took it to the county commission, and the county commission agreed with it and passed it. So here we are, talking about something that's funded that everybody thinks is a good idea. I was kind of dumbfounded when I found out that there were people actually against it. I'm like, really? Anything that you do to assist people moving east to west is going to help. Is it going to totally fix it forever? No, but it'll help. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Next up, Shane Moody. It's the last card I got on Crosstown Connector, but I'll look at the audience afterwards. And Ken, I've got you on short-term rentals. Okay. This will probably be time to do that. Go ahead, sir.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. And again, thanks for the opportunity to speak to you on the connector. You've heard from 4 of my board members already, and I'll do my best not to repeat what they've said. Lockwood touched on the comprehensive plan, and Julie touched on the membership. Dion touched on the membership. I'll echo what the mayor said, that the traffic's there. And what this Crosstown Connector will do will take what is a vacant piece of land, it's a half a mile long, with a road through the middle of it, 2 lanes, bike paths, sidewalks, safe road with no residential units on either side of it. And it will take cars off of Mountain, which is heavily residential. It will take cars off of Legion, which is heavy residential, and it will channel them on a straight path. So we are actually alleviating traffic in the neighborhoods. The money is there. We have for years pleaded with the county and with the state and with the TDC to help us with things in this city because of the amount of money that we throw into the tax coffers for this county. And they've come through maybe for the first time with this amount of money that I've seen in my time here. And they're actually helping us pay for this project. This campground, when it was bought in 07 or 08, was bought for the sole purpose of continuing this connector and building this road through from Beach to Benning. That's what this land is for. That's what this needs to be used for, and I don't know what else the land could be used for. The answer to Stallman, I agree with what Mr. Destin said. It is the worst intersection in town. But as I said at your visiting session, and as I've said here a couple of times before, especially when I came and asked you all to support the county's half-cent sales tax that got passed, the number one project on the county's list for Destin was for them to come in and improve the Stallman Highway 98 intersection. I sent that to Mr. Bailey the other day per his request. Mr. Mitchell, I sent it to you this morning per your request, and it shows that that intersection is the county's number one project. It's the number one thing on the list for their project. So it's there. Now, granted, that's a 10-year tax. It may be 9.5 years before we see them work on it, but it's there. So again, the Destin Chamber supports the completion of the Crosstown Connector and would ask you to keep that moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I've got one blue card on short-term rentals. Would anybody like to speak from the audience on this Crosstown Connector? All right, I got me a blue card. Beverly Henry. Sure. Just call it Beverly, though. Come on up. It's your turn. I'm not going to close it after this last blue card. Marcy, you can come up and speak when she's done. Yes, ma'am.
Beverly, hit the button, please.
Beverly Henry, 725 Legion Drive, Destin, Florida. I don't understand. I see this as a problem. We have the road going from Highway 98, cutting through Mountain Drive, going down Destin. It'll have to be, we suffered through the completion of Legion Drive being widening, and then it's gonna probably take our homes. You're looking at our home. You just put a new tennis court. So you invested in that, which is on the south side. So it says to me that you're looking at taking the north side. I have tried to get confirmation of this again and again, and recently I spoke to someone that told me that it was going to be way down the road and that we didn't have to worry about it. Apparently you've got some money and you want to go forward with it. I don't know what the solution is myself, but I wish that you could find another way. All you're gaining by that is, Highway 98 from the bridge to Airport Road. And you're bringing it all in on the neighborhood. And I think this is wrong. And I hope you'll find a different way to handle it.
If I might, there won't be a bit of construction in front of your house. What we're talking about tonight, in no way, it might affect the traffic flow in front of your house, sure, but there's $1 will not be spent on construction in front of your house. On that strip of Legion from Airport Road to Beach Drive, there won't be a single workshop on your road. So
But it will just be another step to that conclusion.
that it could be, sure. It will be. I mean, you can't say definitively that it will, but.
I don't understand what you just said.
We haven't ever seen any plans to change your road at all in front of your house. They've never been before us. Sure, that might be the talk, and that some people think that might be in the pipeline. But I've been up here for 3 years, And I've never seen a single plan that involves four-laning the road in front of your house. I know the section of road you live in. I've never seen anything. I've never heard anything until about 2 weeks ago of four-laning in front of your house.
Ma'am, could you turn on your mic again? Thank you.
Well,
I just wanted to
have
clarify.
heard about it and have been following it. It's been, we've been talking about this for years and years and years.
Miss Henry, if you would like, I'm sure any one of the council members or city manager, myself, can get with you and speak with you about Legion Drive, where you live, because I know where you live. Okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Anyone else that wants to talk on Crosstown Connector? I know Miss Bell wants to talk, so come on up.
So I've heard several people from the chamber come up and speak, but one thing that I'm getting lost in, and I think I spoke about this at the meeting the other day at the library, is what business wants to divert traffic away from their storefronts? Like, I'm not following that whole, that whole juxtapose of, I mean, most people want traffic in front of their businesses to bring business to their businesses, one. And it kind of feels like there's a lot of, wagging the dog going on in this room right now. I'm not sure what the story is, but there seems to be a lot bigger picture going on that's there's an underlying current here that seems to be supported on one side by every member of the chamber, and nobody else is in that same ballpark. So it's just a statement. It just looks like it's, I mean, as an observer, I don't live over there, so the connector really doesn't affect me. I don't really use that part of Destin. But as a citizen who sits in the room in all these meetings, there seems to be something else going on here, and I'm not so sure that it's not nefarious. Thanks.
Would anyone else like to talk on the Crosstown Connector? For I do have a couple speakers that want to talk on short-term rentals. Anyone else on the Crosstown Connector? Sir, come on up. Turn the button on, state your name and where you live.
I'm John Gregory Davis, Greg. I live at 711 Legion Drive. I've lived there about 2 years, moved from another address further east in Destin. I would just like to say, I'll make my revelation here, I'm a closet lawyer from Oklahoma, and I'm also a commercial real estate appraiser here in Destin. And I would just encourage you to, whatever decision you make it. Because the homes on Legion Drive are being materially affected through the realtors. There's so many rumors going around that, you got houses behind one block, and you got houses to the north, and then you got houses to the south, and they're all selling for $12 a square foot more. Now, why is that? It's because people are being deterred from making a decision, not because of the quality of the homes. And all I'm going to say to you is, if it comes down to the point where my house gets taken, well, I'm going to do the military thing I did for 26 years. I'm going to salute, take your check, and go find another place to live in Destin, because I want to live in Destin. But make a decision. Doing nothing is not a really good option.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, I had a question for Mr. Buckingham, and I want to wait till everybody was done with their.
Sure. When we start discussing up here, if you want to call anybody back to the podium,
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Thank you.
Within reason, of course. All right. I'm thinking this is Janelle Ice. Yes. And she wants to speak on short-term rentals. Go ahead, ma'am.
Actually, I'm on long-term rentals. For the last, I don't know how many years, ever since it's come into effect, I have bought my license, just like I was supposed to do. I come and bought my license today for 2 long-time rentals. I paid my $100. I asked the lady, I said, how many other people buy this license? You know what the answer was? From last year till this year, 280 people. That's all that bought license. Check with your office. I don't think that's fair. I can name places on 4th Street, there must be 8 rentals there, long-term. I don't know who checks it, but y'all losing lots of money. You got my 100 today, why not get their 100 or their 50? Am I being wrong? Long-term rentals are $50 per house. Last year, only 280 people in the whole town of Destin bought license. I don't know how many, because now they've got until, actually, before they have to pay the $100 fine, they can go until the 1st of July. But I think somebody needs to check in on this. You're losing lots of money. You got mine, why not get theirs? That's it.
Thank you, ma'am. Joey, city manager, you have another job. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Ken Wampler to speak on short-term rental. Thank you. I'll recognize everyone. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Ken Wampler, 310 Laripe Loop. Want to talk today about the short-term vacation rental sign ordinance that we talked about for 2.5 years. One of the things that we didn't collectively as a group consider was where these signs could be posted, and there was an ordinance that was passed back when Joey was a teenager that said signs could not be posted on fences, telephone posts, and windows. And one of the things that I would implore to you all is if you drive through Crystal Beach, you'll notice these white decorative picket fences that everybody, if it's an association, which I manage one of those there, and there's another one that I've been talking with, for 20 years, the rental signs have been posted predominantly on those fences because they're right at the edge of the right-of-way. So I'm here today to ask you as a council to take whatever actions necessary so the cohesiveness of those communities and the little short white picket fences, we could put the signs on them versus having them on a dedicated post behind the sign or in front of the sign. And from an appearance standpoint, it would be a whole lot better for the community because the sign's going to be posted. No one's fighting that. It's just, can we put it back on the white decorative picket fences in Crystal Beach area?
Anybody?
Mayor?
Go ahead.
We discussed that at the last meeting, to do just that.
It's on the agenda tonight.
Okay, absolutely.
And Ken is in support of that. All right, sir, just come up, hit the red button, state your name, where you live. You got 3 minutes.
Red button? Okay. There's 2 sides of this quarter thing. I've listened to it all. I've lived here for 40 years. There's 2 sides to it. There's the money side and the greed side, and then there's the quality of life and the people who live in Destin and who have lived here. I don't need no microphone. It's greed, it's greed and money on one side, and then there's quality of life on the other side. It's pure and simple. And I don't care how you cut it, the one side has all been money. My business. The other side has been quality of life of people who have lived here and made it their lives in West Destin, Old Town Destin, as you call it, for years and years and years. That's all there is to it. It's greed.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else in the audience? Go ahead, Bill. I'm assuming you're coming back up for another topic.
No, I just missed you.
Oh, come on, you get 3 minutes. Talk to me.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment about the long-term rental permits or whatever. The biggest issue that I've heard out there, because I've asked, nobody knows about it, okay? That's the issue, okay? You can call it whatever you want to, but I talked to somebody again yesterday that owns a rental house here. They never knew they had to get a permit. Their first question was, how can the city have me get a permit to rent my own property? That was their question. But the point is they didn't know. okay? And I think that's also part of the issue with this, the short-term rental thing that y'all are trying to do. When I talk to somebody that's from out of area, most of them don't have a clue. So I think you need to start, if you want to collect permit fees, I think you need to start telling the general public, because they don't know about it. And I've been here selling real estate for 19 years, and I didn't know about it until about a month ago. So,
Well, you found out about it a month before I did. Because I didn't know about it till
there
the
you
nice
go.
lady there said it, so
There you go.
we all got educated today.
Well, I mean,
Thank
so you know, rather than and produce all these fines, maybe it's time to notify them, and oh, by the way, as of September 1st, or whatever the grandfather period is, we've had an ordinance in effect since I was told 2016 or something like that, that you're supposed to pay a $50 fee. Okay? So it may make somebody's job easier.
All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate the comments. I'm sure our code enforcement and city manager took notes. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on any issue that's on the agenda or not on the agenda that's not a public hearing? All right. Well, that being done, that part, we'll start with Rodney. This is, you're up because you had, we moved the Crosstown Connector up, so go ahead.
Cool. So this is my discussion. We're not going to open this back up for public comment again.
I didn't plan on it. I was going to close item 3, which is the public comment period.
Okay. Cool.
Okay?
Cool. And I may jump around a little bit, and I may ask the staff for an answer, and I'll expect to get an answer. And when I get the answer, I still have the floor. I don't want somebody else jumping in and asking questions and so forth like's happened in the past. Anyhow, we talk about transparency. We just talked about our vision session. So let's get transparent. I spoke with Jane Moore the other day, last week. For you that don't know Jane Moore, she was our community development director back in the late 80s, early 90s. They tried to, at that time, they was looking at putting a moratorium on building on 98, so they were looking at alternatives, and Mountain Drive was going to be the solution. Well, that didn't happen. So back at that time, Jack Dorman was the city manager, and he moved on to get his own business. Well, he's the one that came up with, we'll just change the way we count cars. I don't know if that meant we'll sit out here and count for an hour, and we'll take an hour break, and we'll come back for another hour, or what. I do remember back then that we had people sitting on the corners in chairs counting cars, had a piece of paper, who was turning left, who was turning right, who was going straight, got an accurate count. Maybe that's how they quit counting cars that way and put the counters in the road for when people run them over. It counts them. So anyway, that solved the problem, man. We'll just change the way we count the cars. Well, about 15 years later, the problem arose again, like Mr. Destin spoke of, and we adopted the multimodal. And that solved the problem. Didn't fix it, but it just was just a Band-Aid. And here we are again about 15 years later with the same problem. But anyhow, for the last 2 years, I keep asking, what's the plan? What's the plan? What's going to happen on the west end of Destin? All we get's crickets. Nobody says a word. Well, there's been some plan. There's been talk of, David Campbell shut the fire department down from going in the old fire building because there was plans of tearing that building down and running the highway through there. Then there was talk about moving the community center. And then the mayor brought that up not long ago. What do you think about moving the community center? So there's been a plan. And then there was talk of, can't tear the fire department down because there's somebody buried in the cemetery right behind it, up in that corner. And that just really threw a wrench in their plan. And then I find out that the local Lucas Walton TPO has their 2040 plan, the cost feasibility plan, on the US 98 and Stallman intersection, up there where Whataburger's at. There's in year 2021 to 2025, they have the price tag of $240,000 for design fee on that. Major overhaul with the price tag of $1.2 million, somewhere around 2031 to 2040 completing that. Which that's kind of ironic that it's going to finish that around 2040, because in our email we got the other day, this whole crosstown connector slash alternate 98, that's supposed to wrap up the year 2042, the big 4-lane everywhere. So anyhow, I actually called Greg Barker, our ex-mayor, kind of get his input on it. What was this whole crosstown connector about? Back then, it was about getting the locals from one end of town to the other, but it was never, ever meant for a 4-lane, to be 4-lane through Destin, through our neighborhoods. So when you hear council members or the mayor talk about, this is always for the people. This is always for the citizens of Destin. We've spent millions of dollars to get the citizens of Destin from one end of town to the other. Well, that's truth, but it's not the whole truth. It may have been the truth back in the 90s, early 2000s. The real reason that we wanted, and let me back up a minute. I got 2 pictures that I wanted the staff to put up tonight. Can I get the crosstown connector put up there, please? The other one just shows the crosstown connector. There we go. All right, when the staff, when myself, and the council, or one of the citizens wants a copy of the crosstown connector, this is what we get, this is what y'all get, the crosstown connector. No big deal, right? Well, this is just a small piece of the puzzle. This is the crosstown connector, and that's exactly what it is. It connects. It connects one road to the other to make your straight through highway through our neighborhoods. Now, if you'll bring my other picture back up there, please. This one. This is the true, alternate 98. It goes from Danny Wharf away all the way to Stallman. Up Stallman, where Whataburger, where your ginormous $1.2 million projects is due to redesign that whole intersection. Don't know if they're going to get rid of the gas station or, the point is, I keep asking, have asked for 2 years, what's the plan? Nobody will say a word, well, there is a plan. They just don't want you to know about it, and they damn sure didn't want me to know about it because they knew I'd tell you. And it aggravates me. So there is a plan, and there it is right there. That's a 4-lane highway running through there. Only the Commons, I don't think that'll ever be a 4-lane highway. They don't have the right-of-way through there. And Stallman, between Benning and Beach, can't 4-lane because it's only 60-foot right-of-way unless they go in there, like the lady said, and start buying homes and make it 4-lane, which is an option. That can be done. They told me years ago that Noriega Point out there were 7 condos, that would never be built. Never. Because that's a bird sanctuary. Well, there's 7 condos sitting there. So don't believe that they won't never come and buy your home or kick you out of it and give you a check for it and put a 4-lane highway through there. Now, let me tell you what the real reason is, why we need this and why the chamber is supporting all this. It's not about you getting from one side of the town to the next, because we're doing that already. It's about getting this, what you've heard in the past is traffic count, trip meters. So the problem we had back in the late 80s, early 90s, had to fix it. Fixed a shut down building on 98. Put a moratorium on it, no more. Then it come up again, then they fixed it with multimodal. Well, it started out back in the day as a little 2-lane road for the locals to use. And then it changed. I said, well, light bulb went off, and they said, well, we got a better idea. Instead of this little 2-lane, we can buy up enough property, which they've been doing, to eventually 4-lane it, which was in our packet or email, to eventually 4-lane it. Every bit of it, except for this little strip on Legion. And that's going to get the traffic off of 98 back in your neighborhood, so we can build more high-rises on 98. And then they say, well, you know, some of the council asked, well, you know, did DOT support it? DOT doesn't get involved with a little 2-lane road in our neighborhoods. They get involved in 4-lane roads. And then they're putting money into it. So that's why DOTs, they didn't say, yeah, we think it's a great idea for y'all to put a little road through your town so your locals can get from one end to the other. They got involved with this 4-lane, and then when DOT gets it, then it's going to be, you know, in my opinion, it'll become a state road, and all the traffic's going to be, you know, divided back on this new 4-lane highway, where they can get the traffic off of 98, or they can add the two together and come up with a whole lot more traffic, and the traffic count will be down. So they can build more high-rises on 98. In my opinion, it's not going to get the traffic off of 98. It's still going to be bumper to bumper, but they can still build big high-rises because they got this other road that they can count. Or they're going to run 3 or 4 lanes, 4 lanes eastbound on 98, and then they're going to run the other 4 lanes westbound through your neighborhoods. Would be another option. So it's real frustrating, you know, to keep asking the same questions y'all been asking. What's the plan? What's the plan? And everybody comes up with it. And I keep getting little bits and pieces. Now it's coming down, you know, to the nitty gritty, and now we got to push it through because we're fixing to lose this money. Well, it's taxpayers' money. You know, we're not losing if somebody else can spend it. Let somebody else that needs it, you know, let them use it. What the staff has told us, you know, we've bought the old campground, a couple townhomes, paid for some plans. We can either take this property, the old campground property, and make a big park out of it. We talked about that during the Canaan group. It'd be nice to have a large open air seating place in the park in Destin. So it's I mean, what you've been, you know, reading on social media that, you know, we got millions and millions of dollars tied up in this and we need to finish it. No, we don't. We don't have millions of dollars tied up into it. What we've spent, the city of Destin has spent out of our pocket to come, and I'm not so sure it all didn't come out of grants that we got to purchase that piece of property. We can get our money back if we can do something with it. So there's always been a plan. They didn't want y'all to know about it, and they didn't want me to know about it. They didn't want this council to know about it. If they'd have said something, they'd have told us that, well, we've been, you know, thinking about taking it through the old firehouse, tearing that building down. Did we get something else? And then the county, you know, the half-cent sales tax, they're going to come in and, I don't know, 3 or 4 years or something, maybe 10 years, and redo that intersection. And then in, what is it? Well, 21, 25, they fix to start the design of redoing it with $240,000. So is that the half-cent sales tax? Is that where the money's going? So I just want the people, everyone to know, especially the ones on Legion and back in our neighborhoods, to know exactly what they're going to get. They're going to get a 4-lane highway through their neighborhoods so that we can get the traffic count off of 98 so they can continue to build high-rises on 98. And then they say, well, they can't build high-rises. We've changed the height level down to 50, 60 feet. Well, all they need is about 2 more puppets up there on this dais, and they'll change that comp plan right back like it was. And they'll build their high-rises. So it's, don't ever, you know, well, it's too late, or we've got to do it now, or, you know, we won't never come and buy your home, or, you know, put a 4-lane through there. That's about as far from the truth as you can get. It can happen, and in my opinion, it will happen. And then when you got the 4-lane going through there, and that's what it's meant to be, 4-lane, not a 2-lane. It's planned out to be a 4-lane by 2042. And then when you got a 4-lane, then you're gonna have red lights. Then they're gonna change the zoning. You're gonna have tom-toms and stuff back in there. So it's, I mean, yeah, the traffic's a problem out on 98, but don't throw it back in our neighborhoods and just move the problem to somebody else. You know, just so we can continue to build more high-rises and more Emerald Grands, and we're just gonna keep, you know, creating more problems. I just hope, you know, it'd be nice if we could have some kind of workshop or whatever and get the public involved and show them, you know, exactly what's going on. What's the county planning on doing with the TPO? What are they planning on doing with this major intersection, you know, change up there? It's to tie all this together. And that's what this little crosstown connector does, is tie it all together so you got open vein through here. So when something, you know, they're talking about, well, it's over this crosstown connector, it's nothing, it's just a 0.4 miles. Well, that's crap. It opens up to over 4 miles of, I mean, you can see it, Danny Wharf Way all over the bridge. So it's not just about 0.4 of a mile, this little bitty project. It's the big picture. This is just the little bite they want you to, that they can feed you right now, so that you can wake up one morning and all of a sudden there's a 4-lane going through your neighborhood, and you say, well, wait, this ain't what we agreed on. This ain't what you told us. Well, too bad. You should have done your homework. You know, we slid it through, and you should have been listening better. So I just want to make sure that our citizens know what they're getting. We talk about being transparent, so let's get transparent and put everything out on the table. What the city staff, or sins of the past, we call them now, what they've been discussing, who they've been discussing it with, because I know the Emerald Grand, they have discussions, or Peter Boss has been having discussions with the DOT about the turn lanes, because they sure ain't talked to me about it. They don't need to talk to me about it. Don't want them to talk to me about it. They're talking about what the future, you know, what can they do up there around their property. I know that the Howard Group, I know they have meet with DOT on occasions and talk about projects. So there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that you don't know about. And there's a lot of things behind the scenes that I don't know about. But all this is happening, and I'm just afraid you're going to wake up one morning and there's going to be this massive 4-lane through there. Now, if that's what everybody wants, by God, let's get on it and move it. Let's fast track it and make it happen.
Mr. You got anything further on your presentation? Because you're starting to repeat yourself, Mr. Braden. So if you're done,
Mayor,
you're
with all
done.
due respect, I could sit up here and go on all night. I mean, I know nobody would
can't
want that,
hardly wait.
and I would spare everyone that, but
No, I mean, that's my job as a chair. When you know, I think you've made your point, unless you have something else to add to it.
No, my point was, you know, what I was fixing to make, if that's what everybody wants, you know, if that's what we want to do, then let's move forward with it and fast track it and build it. If it's not, then we need to do something else. But I just want to make sure that the people, they have the truth, the whole truth, not just the little bits and pieces of truth that the city staff or the chamber or anybody else want y'all to hear. I want them to hear, you know, the pros and cons, not just the pros. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Rodney, I wasn't trying to be rude. I'm just trying to carry the meeting, and some other people want to talk. I think you got your point across really concise, loud and clear. That's all. We're good, right? Chatham?
Thanks. Yeah, just a point of clarification. The 0.4 miles that were discussed that we've agreed to fund at the last meeting is a 2-lane road. Just is what it is. It's not 4 lanes, it's 2 lanes. Could it become 4 lanes? It could, but that would be subsequent to a future council decision. So, you know, we can talk about, you know, we're going to have a 4-lane highway running through our neighborhoods. We could. future councils could vote on it, but I mean, if we were going to have a 4-lane highway running through our neighborhoods, you know, to somehow help development, which we control in our land development code, why are we building a 2-lane road? You know, and I'm probably going to support this tonight, but, you know, I've voted and I've stuck my neck out on the line, and I bet there's a lot of Destin developers that wish I wasn't sitting up here, because for the first time in 25 years, you know, we had Rodney and Preble on the council, and Parker and I got elected, and we decided to rein in development for the first time in a long time in this community. And I've lost a lot of friends over that. But to somehow accuse my decision tonight as nefarious or, you know, corrupt, or, oh, I'm siding with the developers here, that's kind of ridiculous and insulting, honestly. But I think it's not a 4-lane road. In no way will this greenlight more development for the city of Destin, because we control that, not FDOT. And, you know, the misinformation makes this job frustrating, because then we're on top of making difficult decisions. We're constantly having to educate the public and saying, well, no, we're actually not, between Airport Road and Beach Drive, we're not changing a thing on Legion Drive. And if we were to ever change a thing on Legion Drive, then we would have to approve it on the city council in a future vote, and hopefully we'd have a vigilant public to stop that. I don't see how this road's going to, you know, be destructive to our neighborhoods. If anything, it's going to take traffic off of Legion Drive from Beach Drive to Benning, which I drive by about 6 times a day, and I use it. But yeah, this is not a 4-lane highway. Could be, but hopefully we'll have a reasonable council that won't support it. And this is not going to greenlight more development, because we control that, and we've already taken control of that by reducing densities in this town. And if anybody ever wanted to change it, it's not going to be trips on 98, and it's not going to be capacities on 98, and FDOT's not going to approve big Tier 3 DOs. The city council's going to do that, and will always do that. You know, FDOT doesn't approve developments, and they don't control LDCs and comp plans. We do. So this in no way is going to affect development in Destin.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Mr. Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. So, you know, one of the things that's been said tonight is the fact that the councils over the years have struggled with the decision. They've gone back and forth. There have been continued concerns, et cetera. And I think what that says to me, and what I've personally experienced, is that when I came on this council in 2014, you know, you kind of take everything in. There's this period where you're just sort of absorbing and learning and watching, and literally during this period, you start to get a feel for how things are operating. You start to learn what to look into, how to look into it. So this learning curve is occurring. And so the same thing happened to me. When I first got on this council, I thought the connector was a done deal, that council really was going to have no further say in it because it was already done. Shortly after I got on council, there was a PD&E done that seemed to sort of further cement that idea. And it wasn't until probably a year or so ago I started realizing, wait a minute, we have the ability to change decisions if we need to. And so I understand why councils have gone back and forth in the past, but the one thing that has endured is the fact that the councils over and over and over have had concerns, and that's why this thing 25, almost 30 years later, still has not been built. One thing that has bothered me from the beginning of this is a lot of the misinformation that I personally have received, that I've seen be disseminated throughout the community, that I've seen be given by different staff members over the years. And to start off with, I'd like to address the fact that everybody's talking about Legion and Azalea are only going to be 2 lanes. That's incorrect. And I have the PD&E done in 2016 that says otherwise. I'll read it to you here. Because Azalea Drive and Legion Drive are not currently 4-lane roads, the The proposed project would be constructed in phases. The first phase would provide 2-lane roadways. The second phase would expand to be ultimately providing 4-lane facility when Azalea Drive and Legion are ultimately widened to 4 lanes each. So there you go. It is planned to be 4 lanes at some point. So that's the first huge piece of misinformation that has been fed. And for these folks that live on Legion, it sounds like your concerns are valid. You know, to follow up with that, this whole idea about our capacity on the highways and the problems that we face with the traffic, clearly we can't argue with that. I've said over and over, every local I know doesn't even use 98. We're already on the back roads because we're not going to sit in the traffic. So I've said I'm still going to continue to probably use Mountain. I'm going to cut through Kelly. I mean, all the other routes that we all already use. I don't really need a third little road to get me in the same direction. When you look at the level of service, which is one thing that is a major impact on this, you go back to the levels of service that we saw, and the first thing that I note here is that the level of service on 98 here in Destin has been an F since 2002. And we're getting worse. Because guess what? We're not expanding 98 down through the harbor. It's even the FDOT construction occurring now, it's not going to widen until it reaches airport, right? That's where it forks out. So we're not widening 98 in the worst part of the traffic in this town. And we're at an F. Our average traffic count back in, let's see when this was done, 2013, was 48,860. To be at a D, we had to be at 36,700. So back in 2013, we were already 33% over the capacity for 98. And that's 6 years ago now. Think how much worse it is now. You know, they say that they had anticipated that the traffic counts on 98 would be 62,000 vehicles by 2021. And, you know, from everything I've heard, we've actually exceeded that, what their estimates were to this point. So God knows what we're going to be in 2021. The other interesting thing to take into consideration here is that we've got Commons that was built as part of this whole master plan of the Azalea Corridor, as it was called back in the early days. Commons Drive has been at an F since 2015. I mean, we're looking at our major arteries, and even the one that we're looking at trying to help us is at an F. But here it gets better. And by better, I don't mean better, I mean actually worse. When you look at the different plans that were brought forward to the council to consider in terms of options for the corridor, the Azalea Corridor or the connector, whichever you want to call it, back in 2000, okay, this is now 19 years ago, FDOT brought forward 4 different options. The first one was do nothing. Okay? The second one was the idea of a 4-2 concept, which would have been 98 as a 4-lane road and then construct a 2-lane parallel road, which sounds like what we all kind of thought the connector was, except now we know that ultimately it was going to become 4-lane as well. Okay? They actually ended up saying that that wasn't going to really work because, and I quote, it would provide a short-term level of improvement, not be cost-effective, or meet the projected 2020 level of service. Okay? Now think about that. Our level of service now in 2019 is an F. Okay? The third option was a 6-2 concept. That was a 6-lane 98 with a 2-lane parallel road. And guess what? They threw that out as well because it was still not going to increase to the projected 2020 level of service. That's 6 and 2. Now, you come to the fourth one they were presented, and that was 6-lane 98 and a 4-lane parallel. So now we're talking significantly wider roads than what we have even now. It said that this option would provide more of a long-term improvement and a higher level of improvement by possibly increasing the level of service to a D. Now think about that. 6-lane 98 and a 4-lane parallel might increase our level of service to a D. Guys, we have in front of us options that have not worked for years. Council has had heartburn over the options and the possibilities for years, and nothing is working because we've got to, and Lord, believe me, I wish I had a magic thing. Like I could say, let's build a road that goes to Valpy or make it I don't know. But some of the things we discussed, envisioning, synchronizing the lights. We've talked about, making sure the pedestrian crossings were synced with the light, so it wasn't, as soon as the light turns green, well, then the pedestrian has you stopping again. So some of these things, and we talked about how a lot of downtown areas and highly populated city centers have every single light going green in both directions for a time frame, and then they all turn red at the same time. And that gets things moving. And then some cities even have signage that says, if you go 27, you'll make every light through town. And I know these sound horribly simplistic, but they work in cities like Houston, New Orleans, Lafayette, other big cities. And I'm telling you, they got a lot more traffic than we do. But we need to look at creative options, maybe some one-ways, something. But this connector is not it, and the more I read into it, the more concerned I am, and couple that with some of Rodney's concerns that were mentioned this evening, and the right-of-way that we're going to end up having to ultimately take if we follow this plan that even 20 years ago, FDOT admitted wasn't going to work. Folks, this isn't the answer.
Thank you, ma'am. In the interest of everyone's bladder, are you done? Okay, I thought you were. Let's take a 5-minute break. And then, Mr. Marler, you can speak when we get back. Should ate some food today. Just hope nobody changes their vote. This is mostly. Waiting on Parker and Chatham. They're eating cookies. I'm gonna eat cookies on the way. Yes. Don't put one in your mouth because you're up first. All right, I got a couple more comments from the dais. And then we'll see if we're going to
Mayor?
do anything about it or not. Go ahead,
Hey,
sir.
Mayor, I had a quick question. Are we gonna, this is item 4A. That means we're coming back around to 7.
Yeah, well,
Do we all have a chance?
we're basically doing your item,
Just the one?
the Crosstown Connector. When we get to 7A, I see the outdoor seating. We'll do that then.
Okay, cool,
Okay.
thank you.
We'll get done with this real quick and then we'll move on. Mr. Marler, you want to make a comment?
Well, several. It's amazing what social media has done to the world in a lot of ways. There's always going to be rumors and half-truths. Somebody heard it from somebody else and all that stuff. And I mean, I applaud Rodney for what he brought forward. If everything can be documented and prove that, I mean, when he talks about staff, I don't think any of our current staff are involved in what's going on, because I think they're as clueless as some of us are of what's going on. From my time on the council, and as Mr. Destin, the elder, stated earlier, the intent was to get locals back and forth without having to go on Highway 98. Apparently that intent is what I've been going on for the last several years. To correct one thing, always there is the potential of changing from 2 lanes to 4 lanes if there's enough right-of-way. I know there's not enough on Legion because there's only 60-foot right-of-way. What's done on Legion is there and can't be changed on that section unless we do purchasing houses, eminent domain, or whatever you want to call it. On Azalea, yes, there is 100 feet right-of-way, which could eventually be a 4-lane if necessary, as well as the little section we keep arguing about tonight. We paid $4.7 million for the campground property, and I don't exactly know how much we paid for the other 2 adjoining properties that dogleg to the campground offhand, and of course the monies we've just spent on Sandalwood. So that's one thing. What do we do with that property if we kill this tonight? And if we kill this tonight, that doesn't stop councils, future councils from bringing it all back up again and starting this whole mess again. Nothing is in concrete in one way. The biggest issue I look at is, what do we do now? Kill it? Table it? Come back at it in a couple of years when everybody's screaming that we need the road again? I don't know. But the biggest issue is we have a situation now that's going to get worse, whether we build this little section of road or don't build this section of road. We are not going to solve our traffic problems on Highway 98. We're not going to solve our traffic problems on the back streets. We have been found. GPS is wonderful in some ways and can hurt us in the other ways. I guess the biggest issue I have to face is that I supported it, and I kind of still support it in the way of what the original intent was. Apparently we've got so much misinformation or undocumented information that nobody knows what we're actually trying to get here. I mean, when I said I wanted this thing, I wanted it because I thought it was the best thing for locals to get from point A to point B. I never thought about it going any further than to Azalea and Stallman, And that was it. I never thought of it as a back way to get from point A to point B and point C over the bridge. That's always been my personal opinion of it. What it was designed to do was exactly be what it was, a way for locals to get home from point A to point B. We can, as Chatham said, we can control development. I never knew about the trip situation on Highway 98 and some of the stuff DOT had. So for me, I'm at a quandary which part of the fence I want to sit on, because I want to do the right thing for all our citizens, but then we've got citizens on Legion Drive and Mountain Drive that are complaining about the traffic in their neighborhoods, and you've got children and other things out there that could potentially, they're not watching. Just a case in point, on Friday morning, we had a vehicle, a shuttle bus, leave Harbor Walk's stoplight with a green light. A dump truck ran the red light and smashed into the rear end. Thank God there was, I don't believe there were any passengers on there. It did shake up the driver of the bus. Could have been a lot worse, and that's just because people don't look at the lights. I have seen more accidents because they run the red lights than I see anything else. So what do we do with the current problem? I haven't heard anybody come up with any solutions from the audience. What do we do about the current situation, forgetting the little section of road that we want to do? What do we do with the land that we've acquired? I've heard some good suggestions. Build a park. We could build a park, a parking lot, affordable housing, which I tried to get many years ago, would be perfect for that. We already have this land. What do we do with it? We can sell it. Yes, we could sell it and try to buy more beachfront property if that'll help us. But what do we do? I posed that question on the social media. Give me some solutions to what to do if we kill this item. So the basic thing that I see is too many questions and not enough answers. And I will address this one thing. DOT is giving us the turn lane from the foot of the bridge to the Stallman stoplight, basically because the owners of Harbor Walk Village, Emerald Grand, agreed to give the right-of-way, which is going to happen soon. This is something that's always been pushed by not just council, but we needed a continuous turn lane to stop some of the traffic problems we have. So that's one of the reasons that is coming, just so you understand. They finally agreed to give some right-of-way up. What do we do? Somebody please tell me, what do we do to solve the issue we have now? Forgetting the little section of road, what do we do to solve the current issue that we have now? That's what I'd like to know before we finally kill the possible last connection. And I also said this in social media. Everybody said Mid-Bay Bridge was a road to nowhere. Hurricane Up will change that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Braden, you got your second shot at it. Go ahead.
Thanks, sir. I just want to make a couple of comments. The traffic count is 69-70% of the traffic on 98, was been said before, is through traffic. Doesn't originate here, doesn't terminate here. They go in somewhere else to spend their money. That's over 2/3 of the traffic on that highway out there. So why do we want to divert that back in the neighborhoods and ruin the quality of life for a lot of our residents? And just one other the comment I made earlier about things going on behind the scenes with Emerald Grand and Peter Boss talking about their intersection and the Howard Group. They're dealing with DOT down in Walton County. No way was I trying to say they were in cahoots together or plotting and planning behind everybody's back. I was making a statement that there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that that happen with our highways. I just wanted to clear that up, and that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here on the any other council person like to weigh in on this discussion? Go ahead.
Mayor, I think I think I'll probably throw a motion in a moment, but I sympathize with the closet lawyer from Oklahoma. Greg? There we go. Yeah. I'm a closet lawyer from Destin. So, but your point is well taken, which is we need to do something. We have to make a decision tonight, one way or another. I think it's appropriate. I don't really like, Mr. Morgan and I may not agree on this issue, but I do agree with his sentiment that he said in the visioning session with this is no way to truly lead. We need to make decisions. We need to move forward and get back to the business of the public, which there is much to do. With regards to this crosstown connector, my biggest apprehension is, at the end of the day, it's a dysfunctional intersection at Stallman right now. It doesn't work very well. We all understand a lot of the reasons why it doesn't work. There's too many pedestrians. It's laid out in a way that you can't run the volume of cars that you need to run through it. And to that end, I've lived here my whole life. I've seen what happens when you put the cart before the horse, and we've done that as the city a couple of times. The multimodal system that we've overlaid in the Harbor District said that, if you're going to develop your piece of property in the South Harbor District, you have to have property maximums, which will restrict you from putting the enough parking spaces on your property on site. And you go, well, how does that make sense? Well, the reasoning was at the time that we would create a worse parking problem that would force the individuals who are coming to patronize the South Harbor District to use these north of 98 parking garages that we were going to build. I don't necessarily agree that that's like the best way to go about trying to solve your parking issues, but that was what was adopted, and we never really got to test out whether or not it was going to work because we never built the parking garages. So that's what I mean by putting the cart before the horse. We allowed the Emerald Grand to be built, and under a code that only required a third of its on-site parking. It still has a DO that will, if they pull the trigger on it, will build a baby grand that will have a third of on-site parking required, and it will get worse. And that's what happens when you put the cart before the horse, because we created this nice, long, elaborate plan, and what you're supposed to do in any other facet of our lives is you don't let them build it before you have the infrastructure in place. So I weave all of that back to saying I don't really want to repeat the sins of the past with regards to this crosstown connector, because I can see what's going to happen as soon as we create the connection. It's going to be, we already know what happens when this thing dead ends on a dysfunctional intersection. Just look at what happens every day at Commons Drive. You're going to just do that at Stallman, and you're going to spill that out into the neighborhoods. I would be more in favor of this if we had Stallman figured out. I really, really would. But we're not there yet. And according to Dr. Ramswell's reports from the TPO, we might have a study. We might have a study about how to fix Stallman in 6 years, which is a nice way of saying we don't have really good solutions for the Stallman interchange because the right-of-way acquisition is going to be so astronomically expensive if we could fight and get it through eminent domain that it makes it almost impossible, because you can see the three major properties that are surrounding the Stallman interchange. Number one, Whataburger in the state of Florida. We'd probably have to take a chunk of that. We'd take that gas station. Oh, by the way, we're going to have to take just about all of Billy Martin's parking over at McGuire's, and we're going to have to take chunks from the front of the Emerald Grand to fix Stallman in the way that we need to do it. It's possible that this could be a 10 to 20 million or north cost to revamp that intersection. And that is one of the reasons. I think there's lots of folks who want to fix Stallman. It's going to become a funding issue in a fight to fix Stallman in a meaningful way. And I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to go through that fight. I'll be the one that comes. I'll be one of the ones that volunteers as a delegate to go to the county, to go to the state, to petition for those funds. I appreciate the goodwill gesture for the DOT to offer us some money for this little connector portion, this 0.4 length of a mile. I do appreciate that, but that money is better well served to, like Mr. Marler said, what are we going to do to actually fix 98? We've all even admitted up here that this is probably, even if it works best case scenario, marginally going to affect how the traffic behaves on 98. There's so much volume moving on 98, you're just going to take a percentage of that and just sit it inside the middle of Destin, which doesn't really solve the problem. You need to get more cars more effectively and efficiently through Stallman so they can get on the bridge and get the hell out of town. Same way, so they can get into town and moving down the road if they're coming from Fort Walton. So, I know that if we connect this, all we're going to do is create a giant, long log jam all the way down Stallman, and everybody and their cousin and people from out of towns, they're going to use the alternate route, and the only alternative is Seibert and Calhoun. And as it stands right now, I get to work down there every day in the summer, and right now, as with no improvements, I've got a line of cars that goes down and landlocks Dewey Destin Seafood. That'll be abundantly worse if we do that connection. So I'm not in favor of it for personal reasons. I'm not in favor of it because I know that the people who live on Seibert, the people who live on Calhoun, the people who live on Forest, they don't know what's coming, and we will divert a tremendous amount of that traffic that's trying to avoid the dysfunctional Stallman. They're going to route it right into those neighborhoods. So until we get Stallman figured out, I'm not supporting this. So to that end, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to instruct staff to take no further action on the Crosstown Connector, and I'd also like staff to bring us dates to set a workshop so that we can delve into head first what we need to do for planning of the Stallman. I want the Stallman interchange project to be fast-tracked, and I want us diverting a lot of our resources and attention to get this thing jump-started because as it stands right now, the TPO thinks that they can get it figured out by 2040. I'll be 55, and that is 20... Yeah.
Your motion turned into a comment. Could you get back to the gist of the
Fair
motion?
enough. No, I mean, it's unacceptable. I mean, I'm doing a little bit of stream of consciousness, but...
So did you get the first part?
First part, we're instructing staff to take no further action on the Crosstown Connector, and I want some dates for a workshop that we can sit down and discuss the Stallman interchange, what the challenges are, what we think we can accomplish, and hopefully we can focus that into something really productive so we can get some alleviation to the traffic woes on 98.
I'll abbreviate that again. The motion is to take no further action on the Crosstown Connector. Is that good? So Ray's clear with that?
Can I get some more?
Okay, and then we'll do...
Yeah, absolutely. No, if you guys want to sever it for legal purposes, that's fine. Take no further action on the Crosstown Connector.
Thank you.
Second.
Can I get a clarification, Mr. Dest? Does that mean that we're going to table this, forget about it? No further action?
No.
Put it on the back burner or something like
I think
that?
the intent's to kill it, right?
The intent is actually, I don't believe I have the authority to table it at this moment because there's not an active item in front of us. This was a general discussion item. This is an instruction to staff. There will have to be further motions with regards to all the things that we have in queue with regards to, I think, probably the resolution we passed. That may have to be rescinded. I'm sure there's some other items that we've got with regards to the land acquisition, some of the negotiations. There's things that likely will have to come back before council if it were to be killed. I don't think I have the authority to do it in just one fell swoop. So my motion stands right now to simply instruct staff to take no further action on the item.
So I have a motion, I have a second, and I've got some people that want to weigh in. Steve Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, my comments were before the motion, so I'm going to go with that. I've got two questions. One first for staff. Mr. Marler talked about the dedicated right turn lane, and I'd asked about that repeatedly. Can somebody from staff confirm that that is in fact true, that we are going to have that dedicated turn?
I have reached out to DOT personally, and they have not confirmed that with me.
Thank you. Second question is for Mr. Moody. Please. Just have a few questions before I get started.
You have the floor, Mr. Mitchell, so
Thank you.
You just let me know when you're done.
I will. That document that you sent me.
Yes.
Okay, it talks about that's proposed. Was that in fact confirmed? Because it talks
To our chamber board, when that email was sent to us, I believe it was June last year, and Mr. Casella and Mr. Hofstad came and met with our board, and they confirmed that those would be the projects that were on the list for
Because-
the city of Destin.
Okay, because the document says, Shane, see proposed half-cent sales tax projects for Destin area. As we discussed on the phone, this list has not been formally endorsed by the Board of County Commissioners, so I didn't know, have they endorsed it?
They have endorsed it since
Okay.
then. And our letter to them, which I can also send to you, says we support the sales tax because.
Thank you. That was, I just wanted to clear that up, number one.
Okay.
That's all I had for you. Thank you. That's all, I just didn't know. We talked about it, okay. Today, I had 31 phone calls from people discussing the Crosstown Connector. And I appreciate the phone calls, yeah, number one. But before we talk about that, I want to thank the mayor, because the information that you sent out yesterday with that timeline was extremely beneficial, at least to me, from a historical perspective. For those of you who don't know, a timeline was created by staff of just the different events that have transpired in this going back to 1987. And although this information that the mayor presented yesterday gave me a great historical perspective, it opened up a plethora of questions. There's all kind of questions about this now that I want to have answered. And the city manager laughed because I sent him an email at 1:15 in the morning a.m., okay, because I was still up working. But at any rate, this email that we sent from the timeline has 13 different questions that staff's trying to answer, and there's literally hundreds of documents, 100 pages of documents that I'm waiting on. This is just one document of many, 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 okay? And as I told the 31 people that called me today in regards to this, if we were going to vote on something tonight, my vote would be to postpone this at least one council meeting, because I want this information back so that I can make an informed decision. There are a lot of things in here talking about designs of the past, alternatives of the past. My questions are, what did they say? What did they do? We've got study after study, 1995, 2000, 2005. So the reality is, right now, with this motion to stop it, I'll support that only because I want to stop this right now, only until we can get these questions answered. Like Mr. Marler and others, we need answers to this stuff, and this historical perspective that we got gave us that perspective, but again, it opened up many, many questions, and I think these documents will go a long way to help satisfy some of the questions we had. I met with staff today, and in some cases, they're frustrated too, because all of this stuff predates many of the people that were here. So the questions we have, we don't have answers to. And staff's working real hard right now to get us that information, and I look forward to it. So I just wanted to thank the mayor, because this really gave me, I don't know about anybody else, but gave a real good historical perspective. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Marler.
Mr. Mitchell, hopefully the 3R synopsis tonight was supposed to address that turn lane, but obviously he didn't
And
make it, so.
I'm not challenging you at all.
Oh, no,
This has just been, when I was on Public Works and everything else, this was a pet peeve of mine about not having a right turn lane, and we've asked staff repeatedly. So again, what they've told you and what they've told the city are two different things at this point.
Well, I understand that, but that's what I was hoping that was going to come out tonight and clarify that we were supposed to get a continuous turn lane to the stoplight.
Absolutely, thank you. That's all, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Lance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to get clarification on the motion, because last week the resolution endorsing the advanced funding agreement was approved, so staff in turn pushed that to DOT. And I just want to make sure I understand. You're not asking us to withdraw that, just don't take any further action at this point? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, any further comments by anybody? Either side, we've talked about this, we've had a lot of public testimony. I don't get to vote, but I do have this in my hand, so I get to talk last. That's what I get to do. I don't get paid, so I might as well at least get the last word. Oil spills don't come around very often. I think we've had one in 1979 in the Gulf of Mexico that washed up a few tar balls up on the beach back in 1979, and then we had one in 2010 that brought billions of dollars into the Gulf Coast. Florida got about $1 billion of it. And a lot of this money and funding for all these different infrastructures, like the Crestview bypass and some of these other projects, would probably still just be on the list, and they wouldn't be near trying to build it. And so I have a real hard problem with when we hear on a daily basis on social media or on our own phones that Destin doesn't have enough infrastructure. And this particular motion, because this is not, this plan is in its completion. It's just a matter of we're waiting to acquisition of a couple more properties, which takes a few months. And then finally, we'll just start getting money from TDC and start building the project. The project is supposed to be done in fiscal year 21 or 22. So it's just remarkable to me that if we get an F on Highway 98 as it is, and it's only going to go to a D, if we do nothing, it's going to stay an F. If we do nothing, it'll probably stay a D. But we have $7.5 million earmarked to finish 2,100 feet of road, $13.475 million of infrastructure improvements in our city that will benefit everybody in this room. If you're going to Sherwin-Williams from Airport Road, or you've left your house on Stallman and want to go to Walmart. I use the Crosstown Connector. In fact, I never call it the Crosstown Connector. My wife's coming from Fulton County. She'll say, are the back roads crowded? That's what we call them, the back roads. And they were built over time to the tune of, if we finish this $13.47 million project, these back roads cost almost $40 million. And then back roads are the thing that saves us trying to get from point A to point B without getting on 98. And so now this motion says, do nothing. When we do nothing in this particular case, we're going to lose $7.5 million of money that didn't come out of any of your pockets. They're tourist tax dollars, and there's $2.7 million of FDOT. Now, maybe we all chipped in on that a little bit. But you know what? Do nothing is what government does best. We're really good at it. This motion is an example of that. And sometimes I don't have a problem with not doing nothing if you give me an alternative plan or something else to consider. Now, Stallman apparently is a real important problem, but this particular project that is fully funded isn't trying to address Stallman Avenue. When I leave Sherwin-Williams to go home, instead of having to turn right, then left through Mountain Drive, or turn left and then turn right down Legion past 60 residential houses, then I turn right back and I get on Legion so basically I'm going a mile to get around that dead zone. 2,100 feet. And I have to drive a mile to get around that dead zone. So doing nothing is what we do best here. Or not here, but government. And I have a real hard time as a captain, because captain's mentalities is to recognize a challenge or a problem and do your best to fix it. Now sometimes if we're at the dock or you have the money, you can go out and buy the equipment you need to fix your problem. But most of the time, you're 100 miles offshore, and you need to get home or you need to finish your trip. So you go down in the engine room and you find a roll of duct tape, maybe some baling wire, gum if you need to, and you patch it up so you can at least get home. And that's what this project is. It is not going to fix our traffic woes. But to insinuate it's going to make them worse in the neighborhoods, I have a real hard problem with that when I already see all that traffic already there. That's the disconnect. I hear people using that, you're going to put traffic in the neighborhood, and the reason that traffic's in your neighborhood now is because there isn't good flow from Beach Drive to Benning Drive. Is it going to stop it? Well, probably not. But that gridlock that's happening at that three-way stop sign and the other one that's happening at Azalea, at least the flow will be better. And when they're in your neighborhood for an hour in the afternoon, maybe it might reduce it to 45 minutes because the traffic's going to flow. So if this city wants to do nothing, if it wants to give away or stop $13 million of infrastructure improvements to our community, regardless of the overall benefit of it, then cast your vote. I made my point yesterday on social media. I put out factual information. Every single piece of information is documented. I don't talk about they. I'm not wearing a tin hat with a conspiracy theory. I just deal with today and reality. And so this council, you guys are going to vote. I'm going to go ahead and press this little button, and you just vote your conscience of whether you want to kill this or not. Here we go.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I don't believe the motion was to kill it, was it? Do we need to repeat the motion?
No, it's...
The motion on the floor is to instruct staff
If we
to do
don't take
nothing.
no action, Rodney, that's going to... That money's gone. The TDC gave us $4.8 million. They got other stuff. There's people lined up. They want $9 million to build a park on Okaloosa Island. The money's is going to be gone. So if you table it today to take no further action and
Mayor,
DOT responds
Mayor, I
to
just
us,
asked
you've
this-
killed it.
I just asked a simple question. I call the question. Let's vote.
All you got to do is vote. Already hit the button, folks. Ayes have it, so moved.
Hey, Mayor, if it's all right with you, I'd like to walk on the motion. I've got a motion on the floor that I'd like to set a workshop for the Stallman Avenue intersection.
Second.
Do you guys really need it? If you need consensus, if that's easier. Yeah, I mean, you guys kind of, I articulated what we need to look at. I mean, I know that David Campbell in the past had alluded that there was a plan. I never got to see it. I know it might exist. We're going to have to think creatively. I know that there's going to be funding challenges. There's right-of-way acquisitions, but let's see how big of the bear is that we're going to have to wrestle.
Are we going to do a motion then or no?
They're going to bring some dates.
Okay, who seconded that?
I did.
You did?
That's fine, but
You good with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're just going
Mayor?
to pull it off.
just want to tell Mr. Destin that that is one of the questions I asked for in my packet of information, specifically for that Stallman information. Thank
If you guys find it, forward it to me too.
All right, where are we at here? All right, let's step up to item city manager report. You take it away. We're on 4A.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the last meeting, council had asked staff to look into the short-term rental task force and whether or not it had been sunset. It was technically sunset because of the time frame that was put into the original motion when it was formed. So the task force is currently sunset. So if the council wanted to start that up again, we would just need to reform that committee and nominate new members. Staff would like to recommend that we give our new ordinances a chance to work over the summer, and then perhaps reform the committee in the fall so they can evaluate how our new ordinances are working. But of course, the choice is really up to council, and we have other staff here if there are additional questions.
Is it possible that we can just form it and start recruiting folks, get them on the committee, and then don't let them have a meeting until the fall? That way we're ready to rock and roll instead of trying to tack, because it took us a couple meetings to get everybody snatched up and agreeable to get onto the committee.
Do you want to make a motion to reestablish it? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'll make a motion to reestablish the STR committee, and, yep, 7 members. It's the exact same thing as we had before, so we're just going to reactivate.
Second.
I got a motion, I got a second. Any further discussion about reforming the short-term rental? Go ahead.
Question. Are we going to ask for applications again, or are we just going to renew the previous group?
I think we're going to do a whole new batch of applications.
All right, I'm just
So that,
trying to
I mean,
clarify.
you're a new member. I think it's probably fair that you get an opportunity to select somebody you think will
I understand, I just
best
wanted to
represent.
clarify that for everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, any other discussion on this motion? I got a motion, I got a second.
Is there a criteria we're going to be looking for like we did last time, or?
I think he,
Same criteria.
same criteria.
Okay.
Is that correct? Same criteria? All right, let's take it to a vote. Vote is unanimous, so moved. Go ahead, Lance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4B is the quarterly financial and investment report, which is provided in your packet. We have Mr. Farmer here if there are any questions that council members have regarding that report. Under announcements, Mr. Warren and Mr. Burgess attended the hurricane conference last week, and I've asked them to real briefly just give a summary to the council as to the highlights, and then they'll be bringing back additional information at future meetings. I don't know which one of you wants to start it off.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Michael Burgess and myself did go down to the Governor's Hurricane Conference last week, and it's a great opportunity for light communities and EOCs and counties and everyone to join together, talk about the last hurricane season and previous decades, as well as, most importantly, last year, Michael, and the lessons learned from it. And right, I see that Michael has his top 10 list of his takeaways, so I'll let him start and I'll finish off with mine.
All right, first off, I'd like to say that it's terrible what happened during Hurricane Michael, but I sure am glad as a floodplain manager that name has been retired, and I will never have to deal with that again, because Ray Bailey gave me a lot of grief that first week I was here for that. But my top 10 takeaways for the conference, number one, this is just something someone said in passing, was hope is not a strategy, luck is not a factor, and fear is not an option. So a lot of the seminars I attended kind of mentioned or kind of hit on the concept of complacency during hurricane season, because, it's not going to hit here, it always turns, it weakens before it makes landfall, but that's never the case. Not never the case, but seldom the case. Number two, there have been a lot of technological advances in the past couple of years about how the National Weather Service makes these predictions, and how those predictions warrant decisions, and how the public is notified, especially with social media. Number three is the importance of timing, particularly when to evacuate, when to return from an evacuation, when to begin your recovery efforts, when to start community debris management, buildings inspections, etc. A lot of times, it was mentioned earlier, you can get the cart before the horse. Number four is documentation. As we're well aware, FEMA goes through any kind of reimbursement request with a fine-tooth comb, and there are a lot of third parties and software options available to make sure that your packages, when you submit them, are fully compliant with FEMA's requirements from the get-go. Number five, and this one kind of took me by surprise, but despite popular opinion, most hurricane-related deaths are caused by water, not wind. A lot of people associate hurricanes with strong winds, but certainly the water causes the most damage and takes the most lives. And a surprisingly high number of deaths happen after the hurricane has passed, particularly with falls off of buildings, equipment-related accidents like chainsaws and such, and then folks trying to drive through floodwaters. One initiative that the National Weather Service brought up was that they're going to re-examine their storm category statuses and kind of get away from a category 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. What does that really mean? And the parallel I draw is the difference between a Richter scale for earthquakes is a Richter scale. And there's another scale people don't really know about called the Mercalli scale. And the Mercalli scale reflects on the amount of damage that an earthquake can cause versus some arbitrary number. So the National Weather Service wants to kind of shift their focus and to kind of convey the danger associated with these storms to a damage perspective versus something like a wind velocity. Lastly, well, not lastly, I got two more things. Revisit our interagency mutual aid agreements. Are they current? Have they expired? A lot of communities, their mutual aid agreements have expired. And do they really meet the needs of the communities in 2019? The governor, Ron DeSantis, he was there one morning for the general session, and he had two pieces of legislation he was going to sign. The first is to streamline and remove a lot of the regulatory encumbrances to recovery, like environmental permitting and such. And then lastly, and it's coming up this weekend, he is waiving the sales tax for hurricane preparedness supplies. There's several items on this list to include batteries, flashlights, radios, tarps, ground anchoring systems, portable generators, fuel tanks, storage coolers, and reusable ice. So that will be, it's a 3-day event and it begins on the 31st.
So to wrap things up, and one of the most important things that our local communities can do during hurricane situations is communicate with their residents. We understand our culture here. National Hurricane Center, they may know where Destin is, but they don't really know our culture. So one of the most interesting things I heard in the review of Hurricane Michael was the top two reasons why residents did not evacuate Panama City. Number one, what they heard was after Hurricane Opal, we weren't able to get back into our homes for several days. So people were concerned about reentry. And the reentry process has changed fundamentally since Hurricane Opal over in Bay County. So there's a lot of misconceptions there. That's where us as a local community, we need to focus on that. And I've heard that here too. Hurricane Opal, there was a long time before I could get back to Holiday Isle and some other places. So we need to be able to communicate with our folks and make sure what we're saying is relevant so that they can be encouraged to be informed and evacuate if necessary, if the storm is approaching Destin. The other thing that they heard was the hurricane always turns or it always weakens at the last moment. And Hurricane Michael did not. It hit the forecast on the nose when it came to the actual track, and it actually intensified before landfall. So those are two local, I guess, sayings that we've heard a lot. We need to dispel those myths. So one of the most important things that I learned there, and we'll be working with our public information manager, is how to communicate locally in these emergency situations and get our citizenry informed so that they can make good decisions and evacuate when they need to evacuate. So I appreciate the opportunity to go down there. I think we brought a lot back, and I think you will see a lot of good information coming out in the near future.
Thank you, Webb. While I have you at the microphone, and we are talking about hurricanes, can you give us an update on the Triumph funding for beach access?
Sure. For the Triumph funding, we did do a pre-application that was turned in sometime in April. And what that pre-application does is basically provide the Triumph board our story in a summarized format to let them provide feedback on how strong our case is. There is another stage, which is the application phase, which is a lot longer than the 2 or 3 page pre-application. To put that in perspective, the applications I read range from 200 and some odd pages to 421 pages. So the application phase is significant. So we are looking for feedback, but in the interim, what we're doing is we've realized when we went to the Triumph meeting a few weeks, Mayor, you were there, we realized that these applications are data-driven and their decisions are data-driven. So if we are to do a full application, we're going to need some good economic data to support this process. It is a very competitive process, and we want to put our best foot forward. So in the interim, we have engaged some local folks, such as the Haas Center, to try to get some economic data. So I've got a proposal in hand, which we're going to bring back June 3rd for you guys to take a look at to see if that's something that you would like us to proceed forward with. And that could help give us that data that we need to generate that good application so that we can secure additional funding.
Thank you, sir. Looking forward to watching you fill out a 400-page application.
Ooh, we'll talk about that.
It'll be similar to paint drying, right?
Yes, and I do want to thank also our chamber. Shane's over there, and some of our other local partners. We've been working with them trying to figure out the best way to get some data, and they've been very supportive in that, so I really appreciate their support.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, what else you got, Lance?
No, I just wanted to thank these two gentlemen for taking the time going down there and representing Destin, and they are going to be moving forward with training programs for the staff and making sure that we have the systems in place in case, God forbid, we have to go through one of these exercises again. As you remember, y'all appointed me as interim, and then 6 or 7 weeks later threw a hurricane at me, and that woke me up real fast as to what we need to have in place for these kinds of events. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they develop the staff and dot our I's and cross our T's. The only other thing I had was I just wanted to remind council that next week is Destin's Week of the Blessings. I believe that on May 29th is the Week of Blessings for the Marketplace, and then on on May 30th, the 62nd Annual Blessing of the Fleet down at the harbor.
Thank you, sir. We always look forward to that. It's a great event. All right, Kyle, did you get a swallow of water? Because this is going to be a long one.
Luckily, this one's not too bad, not compared to what we've had recently. But 5A, we have Interlight Engineering Corporation on behalf of Legacy Properties of Northwest Florida, LLC, requesting approval of a major deviation to existing development order and major subdivision identified as Tuscan Village. The proposed development consists of 86 townhome units. The proposed project is generally located west of Maddie M. Kelly Boulevard, addressed at 500 Maddie M. Kelly Boulevard. Total site area is 7.81 acres, more or less. This is going to be a quasi-judicial hearing. So if I could get anybody who plans on testifying to stand up and raise their right hand so I can swear them in.
Is anyone?
There we are.
Go ahead.
Do we have anybody from staff, Ms. Kopp? All right. All right. You guys swear or affirm that what you're about to say is the truth and the whole truth? All right. You guys are good. Ms. Kopp?
It's going to be addressed first by our Community Development Director.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. The project before you this evening is for a set of condominiums. The project is located on Maddie Kelly Boulevard. That is next to the Destin Medical Building. It consists of 7.81 acres. And it's for a proposal for 86 townhomes, which is down from the original applications over the years that talked about 104, a combination of condominiums and townhomes. The proposal is consistent with the future land use map as well as the land development code from a zoning standpoint. The height of the proposed buildings is 2 stories, which is half of what our land development code allows. The project has proposed setbacks both from the front, side, as well as the rear. Our code calls for none. There are no new right-of-way dedications at this point, and the project was reviewed by our technical review committee, and they found the project to be well within the requirements of the code. Tim, do you want to add anything on traffic? Okay.
Good evening. Good evening, and for the record, I'm David Smith with Interline Engineering. And I'll just be brief, but I'll add to what staff presented. And there's some history with this project. It was originally approved back in 2004, and it's been amended several times throughout the years. And the infrastructure was constructed so it sat vacant throughout the years. So we are before you this evening proposing a reduction in density. And I wanted to specifically address where that's happening. So this is the map, and for reference for everybody, that's Mattie Kelly Boulevard. This is the property. The development was approved with 2 condominium.
Sir, if you could just try and speak into the mic so that it can.
The project was originally approved with 2 condominium buildings in this location here that were 3 stories. So our goal is to build townhomes, and we're proposing to remove the condominium buildings, which is the reason for the density reduction. So we're actually proposing 86 units as opposed to the 104 units the staff presented. So I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Ms. Preble?
Can you tell me, for some reason, I cannot picture where this is. It's Mattie Kelly at what? Like, what's the nearest intersection?
It's at the end of Mattie Kelly on the west side.
Oh, he's pulled it up.
Exactly.
Oh.
The whole parcel's was already
Okay.
pre-cleared. I think you guys had
You had the
roads specialized
foundation
and everything,
and
right?
And the roads have been constructed,
Right.
stormwater facilities are in.
Right, right.
Stubbed out, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Right now, it's just roads and it's stubbed out, so.
It's right on the north side of the Gulf Power Line.
Well, it's nice to have someone come in and actually ask for less rather than higher and more, and where you're so,
Right.
woo, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Braden?
Thank you. You said they were reducing them from 4 stories to 3 stories?
3-story condominium buildings to 2-story townhomes.
Can I ask why?
Because our goal in the builder wants to build townhomes. They don't want to build the condominium building.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the gentleman while he's up there? Don't make him come back. He's got a bunch of stuff in his hands. I guess everybody's good with that. I guess we'll enter into the public hearing portion. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
At this time, I'll open up comments from the public for the public hearing part of item 5A. Anyone want to speak on this issue? Good. And we have a recommended motion by the staff.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
I'll go with that. I move to approve the major deviation to an existing development order and major subdivision identified as Tuscan Village.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Is there anybody want to weigh in or any further comments on this? Seeing none, I'll press the green button. Vote is unanimous, so moved. Thank you for your time. Thanks for coming by. All right. And right now, we're on the consent agenda, and on that consent agenda will also be the council okay, and the support letter to the Secretary of Commerce is what I had put that on there. So just remind everybody, that's also part of the consent agenda. Do you want to take it away, Lance?
Staff's available if you have any questions.
Mayor, I'd like to make the motion, but I have A, B, and D, and the one that Mr. Johnson has just talked about. And I'd like to pull C just for a moment for a little bit more discussion.
All right, so I got a motion, and in that motion, to approve A, B, D, and the letter for Dr. Frazier.
Second.
And I have a question before we vote.
Sure. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Ms. Ramsell, go ahead.
So I'm not familiar with Dr. Frazier. Did we appoint him previously? Who appointed him previously, and then why are we doing this now?
Governor Scott appointed him initially to the Gulf Council. He's been on there now for 6 years. He's presently the chairman of the Gulf Council, and he's been really fair to our charter fleet and our fishermen, and he's really been fair to everyone. He's a real has a lot of integrity. And Governor DeSantis just reappointed him as our rep, and the seat that he holds is up for all 5 states. And so each state puts in a name. With him being the chairman now, his chances are really good. The Secretary of Commerce is going to approve him to be reinstated. And since then, with the governor starting his new initiative on improving the water quality in the whole state of Florida, he named Dr. Frazier his chief scientist on water quality management in the state of Florida. And Dr. Frazier said he would do it, but only if he could remain on the Gulf Council. And so this is a letter by our industry, by the other stakeholder groups wanting to encourage the Secretary of Commerce to reappoint him on the Gulf Council.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, there's support from the commercial fishing industry that's in Destin as well. I know I can probably speak on their behalf. They share the sentiments that Gary relayed on behalf of the charter fleet. He's a good guy.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. The only thing that we're going to pull 6C out for a separate action. So if there's no further comment, let's go ahead and vote. Unanimous, so moved. Mr. Marler?
Kyle, did we get all that stuff straightened out with this past fines or whatever it was? I believe there was a couple of questions about that.
My understanding is, and maybe Mr. Forgione can confirm, is that there was a code compliance issue last year, but that was quickly resolved.
Yes, sir. It was resolved.
Okay, then I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Does anyone have any further questions for our staff or our city attorney on this issue? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. Unanimous, so moved. All right, we're going to move right on into Mr. Braden. You had item A1, plus whatever other comments you want to do.
Yes, basically on the outdoor, open-air outdoor seating in the Harbor District. I brought it up before, and I just want staff to, if they could bring back a recommendation to the council on parking requirements for the outdoor seating. Right now, they're required 0 parking. And I'd just like to have something, staff bring something back that we could vote on to change that. I mean, that's contributed a lot to our parking problem in the Harbor District, and I think that really needs to be changed. Now that we're working on the LDC, now's the time to address that. So if they could come back with a recommendation, would be great.
You guys need that in a motion. I'll give him a second if he wants. Or is consensus okay? Okay, great.
I'd rather put it in a motion.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, I want to make that, make a motion that the staff bring back the recommendation on outdoor open air seating, parking requirements.
Second. Sure, if you want to hop in for a moment and just do a voice vote, maybe? I don't know. Or somebody want to go knock on the bathroom door?
Well, he's here. He's listening to us. He's on.
There he is.
I was counting on you.
There was a motion made, Mayor, and a...
Okay, I got a motion and I got a second. Any further discussion? Vote is unanimous, so moved.
Thank you, Mayor, and that's all I have tonight.
Ms. Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. So I wanted to bring up something. I think at the last meeting we talked a little bit about how sort of the email policies have changed and maybe not changed, but we needed to try to sort of formalize a few things. And I was speaking with the city manager today, and one of the things that emerged is that when I was first on this council, if I requested information, whatever it was I had requested actually was sent back to me. Well, after a few years, that changed, and for whatever reason, but apparently it's not an official policy, it's just sort of how things are being done. Whereas if one council member asks for something, then it's provided to the entire council and mayor. So one of the things that I had discussed is maybe we need to formalize that somehow and either, have it set in stone that if a council member asks for something, it automatically will be fed to everyone so everyone gets the same information, or maybe we go the opposite direction. If a council member or the mayor asks for something, then it just is returned to them unless they specifically say share. So I just wanted to bring that up because, as I mentioned, it has changed over the years, and I don't know what council would feel comfortable with, if there's a preference or not, but there needs to be some sort of set policy that our staff can actually follow in these cases. So I'd love to hear what y'all think and feel and desire in this instance.
Do you want to make a motion, a specific motion, and then we'll have that discussion to make that policy change, or?
Sure, we can do that. So I would, because I really am, I can work either way, but I will make the motion then that if someone requests information, that it is returned just to the person that requested it, unless the person specifically states share with the entire council.
Okay, I have a motion.
Second.
I got a second. First up, Mr. Braden.
It doesn't matter to me either way. I just want to say it doesn't matter whatever I ask for. Anybody can look at it. Or it can go to everybody. They can select all. It doesn't matter to me. But just whatever's fine. So,
Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. If you remember at the last meeting, I brought up the issue about individuals from the public sending something to any council member. Mr. Bailey got a copy of that, okay? And it was flooding him with emails that he didn't necessarily need, and I know staff has corrected that. So that issue has changed, that when somebody from the public sends something to me, it goes to me. I'm fine with that. In reference to discussion as far as with this stuff, if council remembers, when I asked for those 13 questions to be asked, I specifically asked the city manager if he would to go ahead and give it to the rest of the council, not to respond, but to at least let you all know I've asked for those questions. That way you all know that those questions are there and the answers are going to be forthcoming, and that may stop people from asking for the same thing. Similarly, I made a comment to the city manager this past week in regards to his communication with us. Frequently, hot button things come out. Case in point, last council meeting I brought up about the 2% municipal tax, okay? Well, I sent information to the city manager. I don't know if any other council member did or not. The city manager and staff was actually working on it based on at least my email to him. And my suggestion to him in a situation like that, when you have a situation like that, go ahead and alert the council, hey, I'm on this, I'm working on it. That prevents other council members from wasting their time and duplicating requests and things like that. So going back to the suggestion or the motion, I personally feel like if a council member is asking for something and they're going to bring it forward in the meeting, I want to know about it ahead of time. If they're asking for information to be given to them, for example, Mayor, you shared that information, but if you had asked for that information and you came tonight with that, it would do me no good. Okay, I don't want to get something in the 11th hour and not know about it. So personally, if a council member is going to get something, I would just strongly suggest, if you're asking staff for something that you're going to bring forward in a meeting, to at least share that part of it. Because again, we're going to have to act on it.
Well, would you like to make a friendly amendment to her motion then? Because
well,
I think Ms. Ramzo was saying either or, and you're recommending
or substitute. If you want to.
Well, again, I don't know what the other council members feel like. I'm just saying that my personal opinion would be if I'm asking for something, and I'm just asking for something because it's a project I'm on, that's fine. Hey, tell me how many cars we have for whatever reason. That's one thing. But if I'm asking for information that I'm going to bring back publicly here, okay, and we're going to discuss it, I'd like the other council members to know about it. Obviously, anything we do is subject to public records. It's all available to somebody. But that's my 2 cents. If we're going to bring it forward, I would just suggest that be shared.
All right, Mr. Marlar.
Well, let me see if I get this right, because I have done something similar. Sometimes when we get our agendas and stuff, and it's on the iPad, I've requested sometimes that the ordinance, I need a hard copy of the ordinance, and I think that's where Ms. Ramswell's coming from, where I'm asking for a hard copy of something that we're going to be discussing because I don't want it, I need it off the iPad, and you can't really print the way off the iPad since it's not tied to a printer. So is that basically what you're trying to say in a sense?
No, it's like if, like we've got issues going on with stickers on boats or whatever. So perhaps I say, Ray, will you look into any meetings where we discussed livery stickers, library livery, I always say it backwards. So it's literally when we're requesting additional information on something, so that they're doing like the homework for us.
Well, in a sense, that's pretty much the same thing, because I'm requesting a hard copy of an ordinance we might be going to pass at the next meeting that's already on our agenda. But I'd like a hard copy so that I don't have to keep looking at the iPad.
See, we got a motion and a second, but seeing how this affects the city manager and the staff directly, do you guys have any comments, pro or con? I think the only thing we got to be careful is not hit reply all, which we're told that all the time, to violate sunshine issues.
I know this sounds so petty, but honestly, I mean, we do need some protocols in place so that everything is consistent and we know what to expect.
This is a policy that we need to clarify. Lance?
I would just, what you just said, just moving forward, if I know the direction you want me to go, then I'll make sure it happens that way. The current protocol that's in place, my understanding was put in place by a previous city manager. It's not in writing anywhere, and it's just easier for me to know how you want it, and then we'll do it that way 100% of the time.
Go ahead, sir.
I'll just give you another example. The information I spoke about the Crosstown Connector, the information you asked for, was extremely valuable to me, being a new guy, okay, the historical perspective. Now, in fairness, I learned about it on Facebook, okay? It was hours later that we finally got an email about it. But again, if we hadn't gotten that email, okay, but it was helpful to me, and it brought up a lot of questions. So that kind of material is what I'm talking about. Obviously, it has a bearing on something we're doing. Now, how do you weigh that? How do you decide which is which? I'm just saying, if a council member asks for something that they're going to use in a meeting, I don't want to get hit with it at the meeting. I'd like to have it ahead of time, like any other agenda packet.
Yeah, Ms. Ramswell's motion was either or in the policy. Do you want to
I can
nail
amend
it?
it. Yeah, if
Go
y'all
ahead.
would like me to amend it, then I will, or change it, amend it. I will amend it then to say that anytime a council member or the mayor requests information, that information then is sent to the entire council and mayor.
Okay, that's the motion. All right, and we already have a second. Who seconded that first time?
That would be me.
Okay, and you're good with it. All right, any further discussion on that? We're going to set policy here.
I'm sorry, one other question, just for clarity, because this is, again, with all of this stuff. Something else that needs to be cleared, it's not necessarily motion, but again, we're in sunshine. We need to know, because a lot of times something comes to council, okay? We need to think about, in the distribution code, when a citizen sends something to council, the city manager ought to be included in that, not just the council or the legal staff. Because, for example, we got, I don't know how we got this, but we got this voice message on our email the other day from a lady complaining about something. The information wasn't valid, but it just came to council. So I'm like, it wasn't addressed to anybody else. It was just the automatic distribution, council only. Well, it was an actionable item. So I forwarded it to Lance, okay? But again, suppose all of us did that. He's getting 7 emails. So we need to think about from the IT standpoint, when if it's important enough to send to the council, I think the city manager and probably our legal staff should get it as well.
All right, well, I already hit the green button on this one, so let's vote on this
I'm looking
one.
at Lance's face, who's thinking, yeah, I need 5,000 more emails a day.
So go ahead and vote, folks, on the motion. Unanimous, so moved. New policy.
Thank you, and that's all I wanted to bring up this evening.
All right, next up is Mr. Mitchell.
Okay, again, that's just a discussion point. I'm not necessarily going to make a motion. It's just something for staff to think about. Again, I feel like it would possibly cut down on the city manager's emails if we knew he was getting it, rather than 2 or 3 of us automatically forward it to him. Just something to think about and come back to us, you know. And I don't think that requires a motion. That might just be something, excuse me, that you do, just for efficiency.
So currently, and we touched on it briefly last meeting, if it is sent to the council, the word council, where you're all lumped into a group, then I do get copied on it. But
Okay.
if it's to an individual member, or if they individually type your names in, I do not get copied.
Well, that's good to know, because I didn't know that the council got it to you, so we don't have to keep sending it. Again, I don't know how many, okay, thank you. Mayor, I have a few things. First of all, last meeting, I discussed, and we had up on the board, about the 3-dimensional crosswalk. And I'm sad to say that we can't do it because FDOT won't allow it, okay? There's only 3 approved crosswalk patterns in the state right now, and in talking to people with FDOT, they said that they're moving forward, and they may make some changes in the future, but for now, it's not going to happen. It was certainly not my idea. I saw it on the news, and I just thought it would be a great idea in partnership with the school system, but because of the state law, we can't do that. That's item number 1. Item number 2, if you happen to look, and this is hopefully people watching will pay attention to this. If you go on 98 in front of Wendy's and all along 98 right there, the grass is knee-high. Okay, it looks atrocious for the city. And talking to staff, that is not the city's responsibility. It's the business owner's responsibility, okay? But it's the small portion of grass in between the sidewalk and the roadway, okay? And then in some cases, it's the culvert too, but that's not the city's responsibility. But we all know we'll get the blame for it. But I would just strongly urge the businesses out there to please cut the grass because it really looks atrocious.
Isn't that county right-of-way? I mean, that's what I was thinking, but
Yeah, with our city limits being so all over the place, I have to look at a map to know exactly where we're talking about. But if it's city of Destin proper, then the adjacent property owner should take care of it. If it's county property, then they have the same ordinance that we have.
From Walmart east, if you just go all down that sidewalk, all that new sidewalk and all that area, it's extremely high. Okay, so that's that. I touched on it a minute ago on the other thing, but as you...
He has a response. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Mitchell, I misunderstood you. I thought you meant it was on the business side of the sidewalk.
No.
That the grass had grown up.
No, it's...
I'll get clarification of that
Okay.
to you tomorrow.
It's primarily in between the sidewalk, the small portion of grass right now in between the sidewalk and the street.
Okay, I'll get that to you tomorrow.
Right. Well, if it's us, what we need to do with it, and if it's not us, just encourage the businesses to please take care of it, that's all. Okay?
Yes, sir.
And I just wanted a big thank you to staff. As you remember, and I touched on it a minute ago, about the 2% municipal tax issue that came up that I brought forward in the city council meeting 2 weeks ago. And then on Tuesday, obviously there was news stories and everything else. I just want to applaud staff, and this is just another example of the staff we have right now. Days past, it would have taken a long time to get something done, and in less than 2 days, we had it all resolved. So big thank you to the staff. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Overdeer.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Awesome. Mr. Marler.
I got one quick item. A while back, I talked to our County Commissioner Wines, and he said that I needed to go through the formal process for this. I'm getting a lot of complaints about our little intersection in Henderson Beach Drive and Commons Drive, specifically behind Walmart, where we have those apartment complexes. Apparently, originally, there was supposed to be a light put there that was supposed to be funded partially by the apartment complexes or something like that, but nothing has ever been done about it, and it's getting worse. And I've got a lot of, I have several church members who live there, and they have come to me and complained about it. And my understanding is that Commissioner Wines said if we get some sort of a letter from the city, they can probably address it a little bit better, because we've had this discussion before, and there seems to be a question of who's going to pay for it. And so that's, the county or the apartment complex, but everybody seems to be throwing the buck out. So if we can get something from the city manager and the mayor to Commissioner Wines that we're really concerned about the traffic issue back there, so about the light that's supposed to have already been there.
When I brought this up before,
Yes, you did.
we were told that the original owner of the apartment complex was supposed to do a follow-up traffic study, but apparently what happened was the building was sold, there's a new owner, there's been changes in ownership, they're blaming the first people, it's not their responsibility. So the final thing that I heard was that ultimately the county would have to look into it with a new study of some sort. And then now, of course, we've got sea glass that is there, so it's even a greater impact. So that's the last I recall in terms of a discussion that we had.
So just real briefly, what Mr. Marler is wanting is in process. When they built the apartment complex, there were some fees charged to that contractor in the neighborhood of $100,000. I don't have the number right in front of me, but it was close to $100,000 that we in turn forwarded to the county for the engineering, and then they are supposed to install a light there. And as far as I know, it is still in progress. I will double check on it tomorrow, though, for sure.
Okay,
Can you send that to all the council?
Yeah.
I certainly will.
We're gonna have a major issue there soon, if not, soon if we don't get something done. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Destin?
Thanks, Mayor. We've got the City of Destin election. So we talked about this maybe a month or two ago. I had brought it up as a result of Mr. Michel's special election and the turnout that we had during our election cycle in March of 2018, and the low voter turnout of our municipal elections has been troubling to me for a very long time, because I don't believe the public understands that in March you vote for municipal positions. And to that end, I'd like to fix that. Our charter states that we actually were formed as a city and held the elections during the general elections of November. And it matched up with state and federal. People go to vote for president, Senate, that sorts of thing. It gets it all knocked out at once, and you get the highest voter turnout that you can get. And I was sort of befuddled as to why necessarily we deviated from that. I don't think we ever amended our charter to match up with the change. Anyways, we had instructed legal counsel to go and prepare an election memorandum, just sort of laying out what we believe the rules of the road to be, what options we might have, and it appears the conclusion is that we can change the date from March and move it over to November. I personally would support that. I believe that we need to get as many members of the public engaged in the political process as we can, and making sure that it is easy, convenient for them to vote is a big part of that. And so, if it is necessary, I'd like to go ahead and, I think it is necessary, I'll go ahead and make a motion to instruct legal counsel to draft whatever is necessary. I believe it's an ordinance, to change our election date from moving forward from the March presidential preference date to the general election in November.
Second.
And that would take effect, I believe, in 2020.
All right, we got a motion, got a second. Anybody want to weigh in on that? See,
What would that do to the terms that will be up in currently in March of 2020?
State law specifically allows those terms to be extended incidentally.
Okay.
what a bonus.
Or a curse, one or the other.
I say that in jest.
I have a question.
Sure, Ms.
So
Ramswell.
would that apply just to the 20 and the 24 cycle, or would it be all cycles?
If the code is amended, it would be that way until the code is amended once again.
Thanks.
Forever and ever. All right, let's vote.
Somebody's burnt out.
Ayes have it. Normally, we don't legislate this late, so that was a shot well taken, sir.
Still early.
Do you have anything else, Mr. Dixon?
Yeah, I have one.
TDC?
I would suggest that you also direct staff to speak with the supervisor of elections about the practical implications.
Would you like that in a motion? Okay, I'm going to direct staff to coordinate with the supervisor of elections, whatever is necessary to facilitate the change in the dates.
I'm all right with that.
That was a motion. I think he said he was all right, so I think that means second.
All right, we got it. The second, any further discussion? So moved. Mr. Morgan.
Wait a second,
Hold on.
Hold on, boys. I got one last real quick thing.
I'm sorry, Mr.
I'm your rep
Destin.
on the TDC. Just to give you a heads up, there is discussion at the TDC and at the county level to discuss expanding the tourism development district. Now, for right now, it is just Fort Walton and Destin. There will be some implications with regards to the there could be implications if you expand it to how the money's divvied up. There could be implications on whether or not Destin will still have a seat on the TDC because Florida state law specifically sets up the councils once they're created, and there's a chance that Destin or Fort Walton might get booted off the council. There's a lot of externalities and unknowns right now, and I'd like for us to direct the attorneys to reach out to the attorneys for the county and for Fort Walton, and there's a legal representative for the TDC, and let's see if we can get a dialogue going rather than sort of everybody's hackles going up in the air and being concerned about losing funding to Crestview or Niceville and things of that nature.
And we can do that without a motion and a vote. I mean, that's just, you're just directing, unless somebody wants to do that. I think the council's in agreement that we want you to continue that dialogue with them.
If I have that consensus, then I will reach out to.
Everybody's got their 2 thumbs up. We're good.
Sounds good. That's all I got, Mayor. Thanks.
Mr. Morgan.
Thank you. I move to direct staff to bring an ordinance to allow for, to amend the short-term rental ordinance to allow for the signage on the picket fences.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none? So moved. There you go, Ken. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. That makes common sense, so good job. Okay, Ms. Kopp.
The first,
Are you done, Mr. Morgan? I'm sorry. Okay.
the first item is the TRC update for the month that's required at the second meeting. The only item that went to TRC this past month is in your agenda packet. If you have questions, staff is here. The second item under my name is an update on the beach safety corridor ordinance. You all had passed it on first reading, and it then went to LPA. LPA didn't make a recommendation. They continued it for now, so it can't come back to you for second reading quite yet. We're going to make some revisions to it, and then it may come back to you again. If it does, it would be first reading all over again.
Thank you, ma'am. Kyle?
Nothing from me.
Yes. All right, I'm going to keep it really short. I think for years, there's been a discussion or an argument between the city and the county on who is responsible for the entrance of Terracotta Village when it comes to landscaping. And a couple of people have called me on that, and they're getting mixed messages. So could you look into that? And normally I'll call you or email you for that kind of stuff, but I just got it late. All right, here's the part we've all been waiting for. So the meeting is adjourned.